Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Rap Drinks. I'm one of your hosts, Stefan, and we're here with Steve Giralt. Steve Giralt is a director, DP, and still photographer with a side of engineer. He is the founder of The Garage, which he started to push the art of tabletop cinematography forward and empower artists to create the most innovative work. Some of his work can be found in campaigns for Domino's and Pepsi, but you might know him best from his burger drop video. We can't wait to hear all about how much time goes into designing a shot that will only take half a second long. That was fucking garbage at the end. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, good enough.
Basically, you designed some really cool shit, and a shot that would normally take.
Throw it away.
Throw it away. It's not gonna fucking work. Okay. Cheers, Steve. Thanks for joining.
You were doing so good too. I was so proud.
I was until that last part.
I worked so hard on that intro.
Just slap John in the face.
We just can't wait to hear about how much time goes into designing a shot that is only half a second long. There we go.
Amazing.
That's all right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming.
All right, here we go.
Cheers.
Well, no branding on the cups. Come on, guys.
Yeah, where is your cup?
We only have like one cup that has branding on it. I mean, we are shitty rigs. We have to like
gaff tape, right? Shitty rigs on it. Come on.
That's why we're not continuing to do this open and open over and over again. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into still photography, because I think that's where a lot of this started for you as an engineer, right? Mixed with still photography. Is that right?
Is really just I wanted to be the artist in a family of engineers. So I grew up in Miami. My parents are Cuban. All these Cuban people all around. And my dad was an engineer. My grandfather was an engineer. My brother was a computer engineer. That's just kind of how I was raised. But then I was like, I want to be a photographer. And then, they're like, oh, okay, he's not really that into engineering, but he's into photography. Let's let him do that, which is great. I mean, my parents really were very supportive of whatever I actually put a lot of effort into, because I was kind of like more into clubbing in South Beach than I was into anything else of real importance at the time.
Real Miami things.
Important Miami things as a 18-year-old. So I started in school in Miami. I was just taking some fine art photography classes while I was doing technically an engineering major start, because I didn't know what I really wanted to do. And at the time, my understanding is if photographer means you shoot weddings. That's all that's my knowledge base of photography. Well, fashion and hot chicks or weddings. That was all you could possibly do. And
in Miami.
Exactly. Both were easy in their own way. And then it wasn't until I went to RIT in Rochester, New York, to study advertising photography that my eyes really really is oh wow, I could actually make a living, and I could do so much more than weddings and bar mitzvahs or quinceañeras in Miami. So at first I was super into the studio, and that was super cool because that was a class on that. And it was then we got into travel photography, and that was really cool. Everything was just so cool to me because it was just me exploring with my camera, and it was just really natural as a just curious person that I am. And then by the time I left RIT, it was I want to be a travel photographer. That's kind of where I moved to New York City, and I started assisting other photographers. And I was then I actually got some travel photography jobs for some magazines, and I was this is miserable. I was I remember I was I'm going to Turks and Caicos. This is gonna be amazing. It's I never saw the beach. It was going from this hotel to this hotel to this gallery to this restaurant to this whatever.
Yeah.
So I was and I'm you're paying me $400 or something.
Yeah.
It was
you're still paying rent for an apartment you're not even in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly I was maybe not what I wanted to do long term, and I'm more of a homey person a little bit, so I basically kind of broke up the portfolio of the travel stuff, because I had food, I had people, I had interiors, kind of the major three categories. So I started kind of pushing those out, and a couple magazines in New York City started hiring me to do food specifically, and I was
nice.
oh, okay, this is cool. And it was a lot of like Food Network magazine. I shot tons for them. So it was a portrait of Bobby Flay, and then some of his food, or Ina Garten, or so a lot of the Food Network stars, and that, because I could do both. I could do the people and the food. And then I got kind of bored. Basically, I had my own studio in Manhattan, and I was doing still photography, a lot of catalog work too. I shot a bunch of stuff for Victoria's Secret, like shoes and handbags and stuff like that. And I was okay. And that kind of eventually led me to where I am today, where I was let me take a continuing ed class in welding, because I'm let me build some stuff, So I made some furniture, and then a class in woodworking, and then a class in electronic circuits and a class in plastics and epoxies, and I like just throw it at me. Like there's this place actually that was in Bushwick called the Third Ward. That was this awesome place, and I just started taking all these classes and started building stuff on the side. Like I was still doing photography as my
You went down the rabbit hole.
I really did. I was just like, my girlfriend, now wife, was just like, yeah, I'm going to just take some classes, whatever. And she, once again, also encouraging, like, great, have fun. I'm going to go drink with some friends, So, and eventually I was just like, okay, well, I'm bored of still photography at that point. I mean, I was probably like 10 years into my still career at that point and doing fine. Like it was great. I bought an apartment and like, all the New York City dream things. But I was just like, this is not like what I was built for here, like long term. So I was like, how do I bring all this stuff that I'm excited about building and engineering and all this stuff? I wouldn't even call it engineering at the time. It was just more like, maker stuff, tinkering. Yes. In with photography into like a new place, and that's where kind of had just shot this Budweiser campaign that was like Bud and burgers, and it was just like these really intricate burgers with like eggs and avocado and all this stuff on them and a beer next to them, and I was just like, but it's so boring, like you can't see the layers, it's just like it's just sitting there, it's not moving, like so I'm like, what if I make this better? Like, and I try to learn video and kind of go down that rabbit hole. I had taken, in my pursuit of classes, I had taken like a little intro to filmmaking at SVA class at night too.
Okay.
This is I'm like the 30-something-year-old with all these 18-year-olds in the class. And
I was going to say, it's like if you were only doing still photography, it's like the video is kind of a big jump.
Yeah, exactly. I was like sound and editing and like all that stuff. So I was like, all right, how do I make this better? And I was like, kind of came up with this idea in my brain of just like, it's like you're, imagine all the layers of the burger are like floating in midair and you're like on a parachute flying down them, and then when you get to the bottom, they all land and crash. And then you pull out, and then you see the beer come in afterwards. So I'm like, and so how do I do this? It's like, so I was like, all right. I started researching. I was like, okay, how do I move a camera and video? Because once again, I only use tripods and camera stands and whatever. And it's like, robots is a thing. It's like, it's like, all right,
The obvious jump.
obvious
So
yes. Like mechanical solution that is repeatable at high speed. So I started doing research, and I found, that there was two in New York City, and I called them both up, the people that own the robots, and I was just like, hey, dude, can I check out your robot? One guy was just like, he wasn't the most open and welcoming. And the other people were actually here in Long Island City, actually, funny enough. And they're like, we don't know what to do with the robot. We own it, and we kind of ran out of ideas, because all they do is shoot stock footage for like Shutterstock with it.
Interesting.
And they originally thought it was going to be as fast as like bullet time, like Matrix stuff, but it really isn't. It's fast, but it's not Matrix fast. So they're like, oh, what do you do with it? And I'm just like, I kind of gave them a whole brief of like, this is the shot, this is whatever. And they're like, okay, we'll help you out with it. I was just like, cool. Oh, wow, that's cool. And I'm like, but wait, you don't have a kitchen? How do I make the, I was like, so we made it work. And that was part one. It's like, okay, great. They owned a Phantom. They owned lenses. They had the lights. They had all the other stuff, which was amazing. And but then I'm like, okay, I have to make the thing happen.
Yeah.
How do I do that side of it? So that's where like my classes I was taking. It was like this Arduino. It's like the little electronic computer thing that's like $50. It's like for tinkerers and stuff. And it's like, all I really need to do is like trigger some different things and start blah, 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 blah. I'll leave all the details out, but. That was a few months of me experimenting and learning and building this thing I called Patrick, which was like precision Arduino timing something, whatever it is. It's like it's replaced by a little box we have now on a shelf. But so basically, I made it happen. It was a self-test that I just like went into, and I was just like, let's figure this thing out. And that's kind of my motto in general. Is just like, problem. Okay, well, let's just figure this out. We'll find a way to make it work. A la shitty rigs. There's always, where there's a will, there's a way, And, or I love it. Some DP told me once, he's like, if there's no solution, there's no problem. Because it's like, whatever, this isn't working. It's just like, is there a way to fix that? Nope. Okay, well, there's no problem. We're just going to keep shooting. Yeah.
Keep going.
So definitely much my motto there. But yeah, so I did that burger drop, and then I put all the behind the scenes on the internet, and like that just like very unexpectedly just blew up, you know, and it was just like everywhere, and like everyone was calling me like, oh, can we put this on our TV show and whatever, and I was like, cool, you know, because you know I had so many friends that are like, nobody's gonna give a shit about your stupid shot, you know, like, and I'm like,
first off, bold move going to somebody and telling them your idea when they have all the stuff that makes it possible.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, and good on them for not just taking it and being like, okay, fuck this kid.
Well, there's still a shitload of rigging and everything
Yeah.
involved. You
it
know?
was very complicated. They kind of thought I could pull it off. They're kind of like, weren't sure.
And I've seen the rig. It's like these two arms that kind of pull apart, and was there string holding?
Yeah, it was like stretchy, elastic.
But
yeah.
it looks like an erector set almost,
Kinda,
you know. So
yeah.
it's like, how did you come up with why that? I guess is the
So basically, I needed something to string the strings on, because I wanted to basically cut off the strings with scalpel blades, basically, so that they get out of the way, so we don't have to retouch them out. So they literally, you know, it's a clean shot, because I didn't know anything about retouching video. Never, you know, still share Photoshop, no problem. And then I had to make room so the beer could come in too. So that's why they spread out after they sliced. So there was room for the hand model to come in and lay the beer down if needed. Because once again, I didn't know anything about compositing. Like it was like very basic knowledge of Premiere at the time.
Yeah, that's all stuff that's actually happening. It's not layered.
Like there's so much easier ways to do it now in retrospect. But I'm like, I want to do it in camera, you know. So which is how I do like to do things as much as possible. But now we're like, oh, we'll just add the beer in later. It's fine. We'll do that separately. You know, wanted it to feel real, you know.
In the moment.
I'm a purist in a lot of ways. Like, do it in camera if we can, you know, as much as possible.
It's just easier for everyone to understand, you know, if they can actually see it. You don't have to like explain like, oh, and then we're gonna add in this, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, my life is a little more previs heavy with a lot of stuff. Showing a client that's going to spend, you know, $500,000, like. But wait, what is it going to look like? All right, we'll make you a previs.
Trust me.
Can you tell us a little bit of how you would do it differently if you're taking that video than you would back then?
So so that same shot now. So basically, it was this little computer thing that was controlling like RC car servos, basically, that had the blades on them that would just go.
Yeah.
So way overcomplicated for what I could do today, basically. So now when we've done the shot, it's just one pneumatic cylinder, like an air cylinder, that just goes. It has a blade on it. It just goes like right down and just cuts straight down the wires. And then you just make a little metal frame. You put that on it. You put your layers on, and boom, done. Like literally, it could be a 2-hour shot now. Yeah.
And how long did it take you when you first did the burger shot?
So long. And because it was like I learned Arduino coding to be able to code on the thing that I was using. So it was literally like a 3-month process the first time. Yeah. Not to say that still today getting the landing right isn't a little bit of dumb luck still, because it's like, oh, everything bounces differently every time, and you know,
So when that process of like you did this burger video, it blew up the internet, and you get your first client from that. Like, how did that work for you?
So it was interesting. I already had clients, right? But there were still clients, right? So it's just like, you know, so for me, I had shot for, you know, Pepsi's and all these different brands and burger places and whatever it is. But luckily, right after that was like all my clients saw it, you know, because they're like, oh my God, that looks so cool, Steve, that you did this thing. Yeah. They're like, but we can never pay you to do that because we're distills people, you know, mostly. So luckily, one of my old clients that was a Godiva that moved to Hershey's soon after was like, hey, we have this new Times Square store we're opening. It has these huge billboards. Still photos are going to be way too boring on it. Is there any way you could do like a Hershey's version of that burger drop that's going to be super cool that we could put up on Times Square? You know, it was just like, yeah, I think I could do that. And that was it was dumb luck as far as the timing, where I had done that, and then at the same time I met this guy, Matt Huber, who's now my full-time effects rigger person, basically.
Oh, nice.
We had a bromance on Instagram. It's like, hey, dude, your stuff's so cool. Hey, dude, your stuff's so cool. And then he happened to have just moved back from LA to New York because he had lived in Brooklyn, then he went to LA, and then he came back to Brooklyn. And I was like, hey, dude, you know, let's meet for coffee, whatever it is. And we spoke the same language as far as all the effects stuff. And he was a still photographer. But he was more excited about the rigging of the stuff than the client side and the art and all the other things. Yeah. So we kind of had met right around that time, and it was just like the Hershey's job came in, and I was just like, I don't know, I knew how I had to do it, but I'm like, this is really complicated. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, Matt, hey, do you want to team up on this? I could pay you to do the rigging on this one, you know, because he was really good at motors. You know, like I was more about bam, boom, boom, like pneumatics, and steel, and he was like aluminum and motors and precision. So it was like a really nice. We're a good, zing zang, whatever, whatever. Two sides to the same thing, and. So we came up with this idea of like, it was like 11 different motors or something like that. So this was all custom made. It wasn't like a robot that you bought off the shelf or anything. That had like the s'more, the marshmallow, the chocolate, the graham crackers, and they spun. And then we even made a custom camera mover because we didn't have a robot at the time for this one.
Yeah.
So he made his like custom just like tilt and pan kind of rig to be able to
nice.
track with it and focus and all that stuff. And he ran it through Dragon Frame actually, which is like stop motion software, but it has like a hardware thing to control motors.
Damn.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, we did that, and client was super happy, and they're like, it like blew up Hershey's too. That's the thing. It was like, because they had been doing so much CGI, and it was like so unexpected because it came in through the back door through this guy that was doing the store. It wasn't like that agency that handles Hershey's that hired this whole campaign, and it also went viral. So it was kind of an insane moment too for a client to be like, that is Hershey's.
Yeah.
To be like, holy shit, this is really good. Like, this is like where our brand needs to go. And it kind of really changed a lot of stuff for them. And with that, they actually they're like, can we use the behind the scenes on the Hershey's like ad, like on Instagram
For money.
Yeah. But they even like on their Instagram ad, they even credited me.
Oh, nice.
Like,
that's
Steve Giralt,
great.
like, which is like
you
crazy
never get
for
that.
a brand
Yeah,
to
that's
like
awesome.
do that. So it was great. I mean, and I ended up shooting for Hershey's for a while and all that stuff. So it was a really nice, relationship. It was really, unique moment where the client needs and your needs really line up, really well. Because it's usually like, oh, I need money. The client needs a thing. Great. I'll make them a thing for money.
You're dealing with real chocolate.
Yeah.
You're dealing with like
Yeah.
real things. So like, and you're dealing with high powered lights and like, how are you dealing with that? Do you have a person that comes in and is your food stylist person?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like-
Oh, for sure. I
Okay.
suck at food styling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the same person that was doing stills. There's not like a lot of difference in there, is there?
Yeah, when it comes to food stylists, it's really like they're unique in that they're not chefs. They're like, they know how to make things look good on camera. And then we always push them because we're like, no, we don't want you to make it normally. We need this to look like this and this part to look like this. And when they come together, they have to be perfectly this way. So for example, on the s'mores job, it was like getting the marshmallow to be the right softness. You've made a s'more, right? Before,
Yeah.
like it's either you burn it or it's cold on the inside. Like trying to get that just right without like dripping off the rig and whatever it is, and then also to get at the same time the chocolate to be melted the right way and everything to kind of be the right. Took like a day of just trial and error, doing different takes. Everything else stayed the same. And in general, what we do is we're trying to remove the human whoopses out of the process. So that's where the robots come in handy. So like, we need to like play a little bit, but we don't want everything to be an experiment every take. Like, oh, whoops, the focus was off on that one. But I'm like, oh, it was melted perfectly.
Only change one thing at a time. Yeah.
A very scientific method, and like, oh, let's try this and see if that fixes it. So it's just like, oh, let's heat the marshmallow for 2 minutes and then try one, and then let's heat it for 4 minutes and then try one, and then like, oh, let's use a blowtorch and see how that works. So food stylists are definitely a huge part of our life, and we use specific ones that understand the nuance of what we're trying to accomplish. More technical food stylists, I would call it. But you still use somebody different if it's like a sub sandwich versus ice cream versus chocolate. They're also very different, just like you don't want your knee surgeon to do brain surgery. It's kind of similar but different. Still surgeon.
Yeah. You might not know the answer to this, but are there rules for photographing food and stuff like that? Like you can only use the stuff that's in that food, right? Like you can't bring in something and advertise it as this burger when it's cardboard.
Where would one look up if there is really a rule on that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypothetical rules around that. The word on the street, let's call it, is that if you're selling, let's say, ice cream, it should be the real ice cream that they actually make. But the syrup that goes on top of it, if they're not selling that, doesn't need to be real.
Oh,
right?
interesting. Okay.
So a lot of times, if you're shooting, let's say, syrup, you can use fake ice cream. Or if you're selling, ketchup, like the burger doesn't have to necessarily, yes, you want it to look as good as possible and authentic and all that stuff. Yeah. And right now, the vibe, in the world is generally food wants to be very real because like Gen Z's like, oh, that's so fake and CGI,
Yeah.
So it's like their authenticity is huge right now, which is great for us because we're all about that and how we do stuff, doing it for real in camera with the real food, but sometimes it shoots you in the foot because it's like frozen food. Yeah, good luck.
Right.
It's like making that look good. And that's where a really good food stylist will like thaw it and then pick all the pieces apart and then like roast each little piece individually and then paint it with some stuff. And then like, it's just like, it is the real food. Just you didn't just pop it in the microwave and take it out.
Just the real food doesn't always look the best. That's so there is a balance that you have to find between.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because I think for cereal, I saw someone use like glue for
sometimes.
For the milk.
And some brands are better than others. Like Domino's is super hardcore about like authenticity. Like they literally send their Domino's oven that they use in the store to our studio that we have to like install. It's like a 10-foot by 5-foot huge oven.
They had a whole brand campaign that was just "We suck."
Yeah.
Like sorry.
Yeah. They're
we're trying better.
They're one of my favorite clients. They're amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they like their pizzas that they want them to come out real. Like they actually have a Domino's employee come that makes the basic pizza, and then the food stylist will just tweak it a little bit.
Oh, wow.
But like they're like all about this is the real thing, which is great. I think it not enough brands are that real about what they do.
And you're saying that's more common now because of Gen Z?
Yeah.
Like it's becoming more a thing. They want to become more authentic.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. And like stream it live, whatever. This is really the real pizza coming out of the real oven. Well, and user-generated content has become huge.
Yeah,
People are just like, no, you like Domino's had a campaign too. Like shoot your own pizza. That's going to be the ad. It's like your pictures of the pizza.
And I guess that's where the BTS, like that's why somebody might want to use the BTS too, to prove like not only did we do this, we actually did this. It's like a two-step campaign, I guess.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for a brand to hire me just to shoot only BTS and not actually roll film in the camera. Like
can we rent the body of the Phantom but not turn it on?
Yeah, just make the little lights blinky.
But I am curious because you're talking about like your first job with Hershey's, right? This is your first paid position that you're getting paid to do this motion graphics and motion camera capturing. What's the rate for this stuff? Like, how do you figure out the pricing on something like that for them?
Well,
because like how long, also including like how long it takes, right? Because it takes a lot of time.
Well, it wasn't even that easy too. It's just like, they wanted a s'mores spot and they wanted a spot around hot chocolate and a spot around this other thing. Like it was like actually 3 spots we had to shoot together with the budget that they said, this is how much money we have. Can you do it? So there was a lot of free time put into R&D, which is a big part of what we do. That's why we have a full-time team and space so we could do a lot of quick testing before we go into the real thing. And that one also included post. I think it was like $90,000, including for all 3 spots, including post and everything. So we would probably never do that today.
Yeah.
But we're like, this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
It's going to be so cool. Yeah. And they're going to put it on Times Square and like whatever it was. So, I always say there's like, you can never get all the things on a job. It's like, if it's good creative, and it's going to have, good people, okay, maybe that's enough to do the job. If it's going to be good money, but shitty creative, but good people, maybe that's okay too. So it's really...
It's got to at least be 2.
Yeah, it's got to be at least 2.
2 of 3. There's always a triangle.
Like if it's good for your reel, but the money's shitty, then maybe that's okay. So it's like you always have, it's kind of marketing really at the end of the day for us. Like it's like by me having that piece that Hershey's paid me to do that put up in the world, it's like now that's going to get me more jobs, right?
And you did that before knowing that they wanted the BTS and they were going to tag you.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That was just like bonus on top. Yeah,
exactly.
It's awesome.
So when you talk about that time for Hershey's, that R&D research, what you're doing right there, like how many mistakes happened? Anything crazy popped out in that scenario?
I mean, maybe the final shot was a mistake. No, I'm just kidding. Well, because it's such an arbitrary thing. It's like, what's the right level of melt and whatever and drip, But no, I mean, I think there was a lot of stuff and that's why. Good thing about this was like, yes, this is my first Hershey's job and motion and all that stuff, but I'd been on a lot of shoots before, right? So it's like I know all the things that could go wrong, and I knew we would need more time than I would think I would need otherwise if I hadn't done it before, right? So I was I gave that s'mores, that one shot, basically 2 days as one set, and then we shot everything else on another set in the studio for the rest of the other spots, basically. Because I'm like, I knew this was going to be a really hard shot, especially, well, the burger drop, as I said, took me forever to get right. So I was like, okay. And I had help with Matt for the first time on the shoot too.
Yeah, so it's like your second time around, you already have your team is doubled, and then you're growing quick.
Exactly. So we actually did really good on timing on that one. I think we actually got that shot in like a day and a half, and then we still had a little free time on that set or whatever it is to play around some more. And not to say like an earlier take they might have been happy enough, but that one was just like, oh, perfect. But the more you do production, the more you learn how long things take, and that's the funny thing actually. For you as an AD is just like, we can't use ADs that have never worked in tabletop before because they're just like, well, there's so many things. Line producers, ADs, like gaffers, because they make their own lights, all this stuff that, it's just like, the first thing when normal people get awarded a job is like, oh, we got to get casting going. We got to get casting. I'm just like, no, we got to get the product. Because like, that's what we shoot. We shoot product, right? Yeah. And none of our clients could ever get us their own product. It's like the craziest thing. It's
different
like
department. Different department.
No, Pepsi, they're like, no, go buy it at the store. It's like, you want me to go buy 3 pallets of Pepsi. You can't possibly get me 3 pallets of Pepsi. It's just like it's like the number one problem is literally, or they'll ship us this product and like, oh, all the Pringles were broken. It's just like, well, I don't think that's what you want on your ad.
Yeah.
So like, so for us, like the number one thing is get us your product as soon as possible. Yeah, casting we'll do later. The hand talent, whatever, that's the easy one. But it is such a funny different thing. And for an AD, it's just like, it's very front heavy. It's just like we almost always want a pre-light day because we're like setting everything up, getting robots going, getting the lighting going. Yeah. Because so many things could go wrong. It's like, and now like the next level, and we could get into that or not, is just like that now on virtual production is our next thing that we're doing with the LED wall and all that, and Unreal Engine. It's like, so now we're doing that and all the problems that is Unreal and virtual production, how new all that stuff is. So that's like
just adding another layer.
I love nightmares. I'm a glutton for pain and punishment.
Can you talk about like one of those prep days? Like once you do have the product, what are you framing up first, and then you're bringing in the lights, and then like what's that process from like how are the things going to move, how the camera's going to move? What does that day look like?
Yeah.
Sure, great. Let's use an example of something traditional, like we do a lot of beverage, right? So you have, let's say, the pour coming out of the Coca-Cola bottle into a glass, and we're going to chase it in high speed. So we never let humans pour anything, pretty much. So we have little baby robots that we'll use to do the pour. Because like, let's say you want to chase that first drip out of the bottle, like that timing has to be very precise. Like you're talking about hundredths of a second, time there. Yeah. So basically, we'll first get the glass with the right ice that we're going to use, because they're very specific about what kind of ice. It's real ice, it's fake ice, it's acrylic ice, it's and it all reacts differently. So basically, we'll get the glass that we would like, we'll get the ice that we like, we'll get it on the surface, on the background, kind of roughed in where we think we want to be, because then we don't want to move, right? So, and then get the pour right. So it's like, okay, that's doing is not splashing out everywhere. It's not, whatever. It's a beautiful pour, and then we end it in time too, because sometimes you want to see the beginning of the pour perfect and the end perfect. So it's like you got to get the timing of that. So just the robot's like, I'm dumb. Ooh. And it's just like, it does what we tell it to do. The robot is very dumb.
But then it's probably got to be a new can every single pour too. So it's starting at this like the same amount of liquid.
We'll tend to refill it. Yeah. So basically we tilt it back up, and then the food sauce will pour exactly like a cup and a half pallets, or whatever. Right. Yeah, exactly. A cup and a half into it, and then do that. There's different products require different things sometimes, but generally speaking, for that kind of a shot, we just lift it back up, fill the bottle again, and then go again.
Okay.
So we get that right first, right? And we rough in some lighting, make sure that nothing's going to make us move, right? Because it's like, suddenly like, whoops, I got to get a light up there, like move all your shit out of the way. Yeah. So you have to really think about it in 360 view as far as all the departments too, like what lighting is going to need to do, what art's going to need to do, like everything, because if you don't think about them, and then like you're like, okay, now do this. They're like, oh, great, now move your stuff because I got to put the real surface down,
right?
Or whatever. Like, yeah. So, in COVID, I proved this too. I could basically do every job on set. Pretty much, yeah. Food styling, the weakest, but beverage styling, okay. Like the perfect little spritz and whatever it is. So, because I did some shoots during COVID with just me, and then me and a food stylist was like the next person, and then we got up to 4 people, like robot operator, special effects, me and a stylist. But anyway, but it gives me the knowledge to know all the things that need to go together, right, to make it work, so that we're really efficient. Because otherwise, like I always tell people, like learn every job on set, like know what everybody does, because it's only going to help you. Not take their job, but just know their job.
No, we've talked about that because it's not even the fact that like something happens, then now you need to do it, but it helps you communicate what they need to do. You know, it's like if you can talk to somebody, then they will understand what you're trying to say way better than if you're making up words that you think they might understand.
Exactly. Oh, the light like this, you know, it's just like, And also understand how long it takes to redress a thing or to change, like what you're asking for a 5-minute thing or a 5-hour thing or a 5 days from now thing, because they don't even have the thing. You know, like
resetting everything takes a lot of time.
So basically we get all the things in, and then now it's time to bring the camera in. So, you know, we've already kind of have a pretty good idea what lens we're probably going to use, but sometimes we change because it's like, oh, we want to go a little wider. And, you know, I tend to get the camera as close to things as I can. I love wider macros, you know, like because the good old days of tabletop was like 100 millimeter macro was like all you shot with, you know, because it's like, oh, it's convenient. You don't have to be that close to it. So the lights could get in there and all that stuff. And like, but everything is like soft and whatever. I don't know. So I'm all about the 50, 60 millimeter macros, or even wider now, the probe lenses and all this stuff. They're 24 mil, and you could get like this close and be right around
in the bottle.
literally. And that's where the robots come in handy too, because they're so precise about what they do. So then at that point we program the camera move, and then once we have that, then we could actually light everything, because part of the challenge, right, if you know people that do lighting, is like usually have the thing that you can light in real time, but our thing is only in the air for like a second and then it's gone, right? So you literally just have to do takes to see it, right? So, and same thing, you can't program a camera move around something because it's not even there either. You have to guess where the liquid's going to be and all this stuff. So there's a lot of like imagination that goes into this part of it, and a little trial and error where you're just like, oh, let's try that. Okay. And the more you do it, the better you are at it. Like I can program a robot super fast now, as far as like, oh, here it's going to be here, and you learn about gravity and you learn about fluid dynamics and all this stuff that I'll get a degree in when I'm 55.
Is it actually like you're telling it points in space to hit, or can you like drive it and have it trace what you?
It's basically keyframing. It's keyframing. Okay. So so you take it from to this point, mark that keyframe. This point, mark that keyframe. This point, mark the keyframe. And then you have to change the speed between.
And is it like a joystick that you move it to that point?
There's a lot of different ways. Yeah, you can use the keyboard. You could use a PlayStation remote. You could use like.
I wasn't sure if it was like mouse. An XYZ access. You have to like type in where you want it to be.
No, it's a lot better than that.
Cool.
Now there's even an iPhone app, so I could actually use my phone if I wanted to, and just use my phone camera to rough it in. Or I could even do a move on my phone, and the robot
translate that. Wow.
Yeah, you know, pretty quickly, which is cool. So, because if you wanted to, let's say, a more handheld feel, it's kind of cool. You could just like be like, you know. But yeah, modern technology is gonna make our robots smarter. But it is not like it's not like I could say, hey, trace that and follow that, or the person like keep locked on their face. It's not.
Right, you're not pointing at something. You're still.
It is a pre-programmed, predetermined movement. You know, so it's not great when talent is not very good at being on their marks on time. Because we've been on so many things where they're like, oh, the robot was too fast. And it's just like, nope, your talent was too fast. The robot does it the same way every time.
Because then you change it, and then they slow down, and you're like, no, this is the constant. You have to fix it. Yeah.
Oh my God, chasing the ghost is the worst. Because there's the robots, which are super repeatable, then there's all the custom shit that we make that might not be as repeatable because we made it, and it's like, and those have gotten a lot better over time, but a lot of the stuff we made at first was like, oh, it launched the thing this way. Oh, this time it was a little lower. This time it was a little higher. This time, so repeatability is huge in what we do. Because or else you're like, oh, that one was perfect, and the rest of the day it is not perfect. It's just like something changed in the rig. You're chasing the ghost in the machine, as we call it. Is just like what is it? Like we call it rig decay. There's all sorts of things that, like, you know, when you're like doing certain things, and like each time it's higher, lower, left, right, and it's just like kills you. Like, because
is there like a main system where you input all these things and you're controlling it, or is it like hit this, hit this, hit this?
Oh no, it's all one. Yeah,
just one
timeline basically. Goes. Yeah, and it just goes. Generally speaking, so yeah, we use the robot software has like triggers built into it too. So we have up to 10 different channels that we could trigger different things on. Or sometimes we'll still use Dragon Frame because it's great at doing some of that stuff really simply. So we'll use, you know, or the robot will trigger Dragon Frame, which has its own timeline for a bunch of motors and things. It really depends how complex we're going on stuff. I mean, most of the stuff we do is like 2 or 3 different things happening at the same time, you know, but trying to do that with humans is like a nightmare.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You need the dippy bird that just pushes the button.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, you know, there's fun things that we do too to cheat, like where it's just like, oh, let's say it's like a laptop, you know, commercial or somebody who's on a computer and that like they trigger something, so we'll hijack the mouse that they're using, and that'll actually be the trigger that turns the robot on. Basically, so
amazing.
it's like click and it's like whir, you know. We are all about custom solutions
Yeah.
to custom problems, very unique problems.
You're making all these things. Now you're making your own custom lights as well. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be weird for people coming in and see something they've never seen
It's a
before.
funny story how I got into making my own lights. So generally speaking, when we got started, right, like I was a photographer and I was just like, oh, and the number one reason for me to build my own lights is we didn't have enough power to drive 10Ks in my old studio.
That's so backwards.
Because like the whole studio's power was basically could power like 110K without, you know, the ovens or the air conditioning on or anything it is, you know, it's like, so I was like, oh, but LEDs are super efficient. They're getting better. And like, you know, so I started and I'd taken electronic courses and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, I should be able to build, you know, my own little LEDs. So I found these chips and I, you know, sourced them, and then I got these little like water blocks. Like I was like, oh, liquid cool them like a CPU. That makes sense too to somebody. And I could bring them really close.
Water and electricity.
Water and electricity, exactly. Low voltage, low voltage. So I pretty quickly started making my own little LEDs because they're tiny and I could bring them in really close, which I loved too because I'm working with really small stuff. And those are like 100 watt LEDs, which is like, equal to like an aperture 120, you know, nowadays or something like that. And this is like years ago. That's before the aperture 120. And then I was like, oh, if I put 2 of them together, if I put 4 of them together, I make a whole grid of 16 of these now. I have a 1600 watt LED light, you know. So I just started like really building on that system, and I actually ran them off e-bike batteries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was flicker free because that's a big thing we haven't talked about yet. Is like when we're shooting at 1,000 frames on a Phantom camera, you'll see the flicker. I mean, you'll see it on your iPhone at 240 frames, right? You'll like the whole room go.
Yeah, we love fluorescence.
Oh, they're the best. So for us, it's like flicker was a problem. You know, power. I didn't have enough power to run big lights, and I didn't own them either. So I was like, oh, I can make cheaper ones. And so that's where the kind of the seed that got to us having now 6,000 watt LED lights got to. So we have 6 of those too. So we have 6,000 watt lights that now we've custom made. They're liquid cooled. They're on these like copper blocks that have cold water that flows through them. And yes, we cannot hire an outside gaffer to just be like, great, mount this up and get this going. Yeah. So our crew is very hybrid when it comes to the G&E. Like we almost like see our G&E teams as one. Like they're both G&E. Everybody kind of helps each other, and they, you know, like the guy with the light could also do the stand thing. You know, it's okay in our world. We're very hybrid.
European method. That's
Exactly. Because we're just like, it's okay, you know, and it's all custom stuff too. So they've kind of learned it as we've learned it and kind of innovated. So it was like, oh, the 100 watt light then became the 1,500 watt light. That now is the 6,000 watt light. Now we're working on
That's crazy.
1,200 watt light. Because it's still, even on the shoot last week, it was like I needed 2 6Ks next to each other through a frame to get enough light for these crazy lenses that we're using. Because we're shooting at, you know, f8 or f11 or f16 at 1,000 frames a second. And like what people don't realize is like, oh yeah, you're, you know, even at let's say going from f8 to 11, you know, at 1,000 frames, you need double the light.
Double.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you're already pushing,
Didn't know that.
you know, your Nanlux 1200 or whatever, your aperture 1200, and like now you need another stop. It's like, well, you double all your lights. Here we go. Call the rental house. So, or your Vortex 8 or whatever it is. Like, it just gets painfully and never mind like the amount of sunglasses we ended up going up to like welding goggles.
You must be using like welding shields.
Goggles. Yeah, because it gets really gross. It's horrible, but it lets us do some really cool stuff. It's just painful, and
physically.
And
When
that's
someone
also too,
comes
like,
into that room when you have those lights on, they must be like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Well, it's always like we ramp them up, shoot, and then down because the action we're doing is usually less than a second, half a second most of the time. So it's just like you ramp them up, boom, back down, and then
that's part of the programming too, right?
We usually do. We have a different DMX operator that's kind of running the lights usually, because it's like, because if we want to audition certain things, you could. It actually the robot software has DMX control. It's really basic though, but you know, we like to keep, you know, also the ability that we have different people doing different things, because if you have a bottleneck of one person that's doing everything and they go to the bathroom or whatever it is, like suddenly your whole thing shuts down. So we like to try to break it out as much as we can. So
I was gonna say, because of that style, does that mean like a lot of your stuff is non-union?
Yeah,
Because a lot-
we are totally non-union. Yes.
Yeah, because
exactly.
you have your own people that know specifically how to do this rather than bringing new people in.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be no way to train
Yeah.
anyone.
As it is in tabletop too, is such a unique thing. Never mind like how specific our version of it is. But,
Yeah.
But like the reality is just like we're doing the end cards and the stuff in the middle, and we're doing really weird stuff. And it's not like we have the dangers of talent usually around. You know, we're a danger to ourselves in our own way with some of the rigs we build. But you know, for us, it's like it's more flexible to be able to be non-union. You know, but we follow when it comes to pay and taking care of people and meal penalties, all those things. Like we do all that stuff exactly the same way, if not more. We pay people more because they're hybrid custom people that we've built. But it's funny for us, as far as like it's such a unique thing. And same thing, I'd be like, hey, dude, you don't shoot what we shoot. Don't make your own liquid cooled lights. Like, it's just
I don't think I can think of an LED that I've used that I can't just plug into a household circuit. Like thinking of an LED that's a 6K, it's like I wouldn't even begin to.
Yeah.
You must have like a giant like power supply that also feeds the water cooling. That's just,
Well, we have Camlock. I mean, it's just we have 400 amps of three phase in the studio, just traditional Camlock thing. Because the power supplies for these LEDs are actually three phase, so they're big. They're
just
these
like
laboratory
computer powers.
They're like laboratory power supplies. Is basically they found on eBay. Oh yeah, by the way, quick note: I'm a huge fan of eBay. I find as much as I can. Even literally, our LED wall is used that we just bought. You know, like and the processor for it half price on eBay. And if somebody I have like 20 eBay searches going constantly, just looking for stuff, so we use it all the time because it's like, hey, if the used thing works and it's cheaper, and because so many times we don't know if it's going to work either, right? Like I don't want to
just
buy
like I'll fix it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it seems like with your background, even if it didn't, you're buying the 4 parts, like eBay stuff.
You're like, does it really need a lot of help? Did somebody really blow this thing up or not? Yeah. So literally every single power supply for our lights was on eBay. Like we bought on eBay.
Wow.
And even the new one for the new 12K we're buying, we found the new one on eBay
That's
that
awesome.
we needed to find. So I mean, their prices going up.
Do you know what they're coming from? Like
they're basically they're based for lab testing of electronics and systems and stuff like that. Yeah. So funny enough, they're actually made by the same company that owns Phantom too, because it's a science.
Nice.
Like Phantom is a science company. It's not a cinema. It's not Harry
research,
or whatever. It's Vision Research, which is owned by Amantech, I think it is, which is like a science company. So they actually make these power supplies and our camera.
That's awesome.
Only makes sense that they be in the same room together.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing for us is their flicker. They have no ripple in voltage, so there's no flicker at all. Like
So how is it doing that? Is it converting the AC power to a DC power?
Yeah, DC. It's all DC, and it's really good DC power too. Because that's saying every LED you run is DC.
Yeah.
You're plugging it into the wall, but it's converting it for
the
you.
ballast is doing.
Is doing all of that, and you'll get the PWM flicker if it's not a really good one. But yeah, it's all DC power. It's all low voltage, which is great. All our lights so far are just 40 volts, so like we could dump them the light into the water, and it's fine. Like it'll be okay. Yeah.
Now you're gonna have a client come ask you to do that.
Yeah. Oh, we put so many LEDs. We have burner lights, burner lenses, burner lights. Like we sometimes it's they're gonna get injured.
Yeah.
In the process.
That's crazy. What's your insurance policy look like?
We have a really good insurance policy. But then if you use it, it goes up. I don't know.
I'm sure they love that. They're like,
catch-22.
these fucking guys. Yeah.
What are you doing now?
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. When it comes to explosives, it was just like, do we really need a pyro?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about all the stuff that you're doing here, like, do you feel like as you grow, you're replacing jobs with like people with robots, or do you feel like they're taking positions? Do you feel like it's a tool? Because we've heard both sides of it from other guests that say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just different jobs, more than anything else. Like, yes, like thankfully through COVID, like I could run the robot and do a bunch of other stuff too. So like I didn't need like an AC, I didn't need, a grip, whatever, because I was doing all those things, right? But we still have definitely G&E departments is pretty much the same. I think it's more the AC is probably the least used job that we literally do lots of jobs without ACs. mostly because we own our own cameras and lenses for the most part, so we don't need to check them out and do all that stuff. But the robot's doing all the focusing, so for us, like, and we're not slating anything as it's phantoms. Like, you don't have time to get the slate in there and get it out and then shoot the thing because the buffer is only 5 seconds, so that's probably the one, I would say, the one job that we don't use very often. But any other job that we do the robot with other people, there's still all the same people, so it's just we need very specific. The robot operator is hugely important because, like, they're now your camera operator, your AC, they're doing a lot of those other jobs now. And if they fuck up, then your whole shoot's fucked. So, so that's the biggest thing. So we actually have a side business called the Garage Motion Control that is just services of motion control for other people. So we do, HBO shows and Apple TV shows, and we do other kind of crazy special effects stuff with the robots. So our operators are really, really good because they get a lot of practice and they do a lot of work in the most extreme ways. So like that's the biggest thing is like, yes, we own the robots, but we also have the best operators too, and we put the time into them. And like we call it like flight simulator training. Like we won't put an operator out in the sky for like a year until they've like learned it for a
done
year
enough shoots
and done a lot of stuff. Because like you're going to go on the set of like Severance, or something. Like it's like, no, you don't want, Ben Stiller being like, well, what's taking so long,
Right.
So it's definitely important to have a really good operator. And that's the thing. So there's robots all over the world. Like there's over 150 Bolt robots in the country, in the world probably. But we'll fly our operator a lot of times because, like, yes, the robot could do the thing, but if you ever done it with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, it's like your whole shoot.
Sure, it's easier to transport a person too.
Yes,
the tool's only as good in the hands of whoever knows.
Exactly. Just like a regular camera operator, right? Like it's like, oh, whoops, did you not?
Yeah, it's not really getting rid of jobs. It's just kind of like changing.
It's a different job.
More specialized.
More specialized.
Yeah, it's actually a harder role to fit, because there's less of the people that are experienced at doing it, right?
It's super technical. It must be. Like,
it is.
Do you see a lot of people like? I guess since in my mind the way it would operate, since you're saying it's like keyframes and paths, do you see a lot of people coming from like the motion design VFX world that could like kind of fill these roles, or like where do you find people that can?
It's a strange combination because you need to speak camera language lingo because you're talking to the director or the DP about what they want to do. So a lot of times it's like DITs, like because they're really technical based, but they know visuals enough and imagery a lot. Some are ACs actually, or camera operators because they know the camera movement side of stuff, but we have to teach them the technical side of it. Because they also have to have really great on-set etiquette too. Like they need to understand like how the shit goes and don't go talking straight to director, talk to the AD, and like don't go doing stupid shit, So it's really a unique combination of roles because they take a lot of pressure because like everybody is like, producers, everybody's on them if something's not going right, and then you get all sorts of crazy different directors. I'm a really nice director, and it's way faster because I speak the language. I know how to run the robots. I'm like, go into this mode and do this kind of move and like whatever. But otherwise,
directing a chip is different than directing a person too.
Well, just even the robot, like what do you mean when you say come lower? Like come lower could be like this. Come lower could be like this. Can like exactly. Pan up, pan left, pan left, up, down. Yeah, exactly.
What is an example of what it looks like if one of your technicians go out there to run one of these Bolt cameras? Like, is it a like what's the shot HBO would ask for?
It's a mix. It's two different things are usually the main. One is multipass, so like doing the same move over and over, and then you're going to either composite different things together, or you're going to make it feel like a one shot because like you come into here and then you pull back out and the whole world changed. Like a lot of these really technical VFX, multipass kind of things. Like the Olivia Rodrigo iPhone music video that was shot. It was an iPhone on a Milo robot, which is one of the robots that we have, which is hilarious. It was actually
shot on iPhone.
It was literally in the ad. You could see the robot with the phone on it because it was done for multipass. So you saw her like 8 times or whatever in the frame. So that's the number one is just VFX compositing, that kind of stuff, which is like what motion control was invented for originally, was for Star Wars and all that stuff where they shot the pass with the ship and then they shot a pass with the other ship and then for the planet and then whatever, and then they just layered that on top of each other. And then the other one, the more, hence the Bolt robot, which is high speed, is now they want to do this, high speed music video kind of shot, like Kendrick Lamar video or that kind of thing. So we've done things for like SNL where like they're doing a fake music video, so they hire us for the robot. And of course, they call us like the day of. They're like, "Hey, can you bring a robot today? Because we're shooting tonight." Whatever. So, but yeah, we have 7 robots. And they're all ready to go. They have a whole kit that comes with them. So it's like a tool kit, and some of them are on track. So we could do up to like 90 feet of track. So the robot itself moves along a track that's straight. There is no curved track. Because some people are like, "Oh, can you do this?" It's like, no. And they're not quiet. So if you're rolling sound, they're not your friend. Will oftentimes be like, call the Techno Dolly because it is repeatable. It's not as fast, but it's the closest thing that could do the same thing, but it is quiet, So there's not, once again, it's not for every shoot. Like we probably turn away more shoots than we say yes to, even on just the services side. When people want to, I want to rent the bolt. We're like, why?
Yeah.
And like we're really good about educating people and. Like, because once again, we have 7 different ones. We have little ones, we have big ones, Bolt X on track, which is like a 10-foot arm that could go on track. So you could really move around a room like crazy, and it's scary, fast, and dangerous. That's probably the most dangerous of all the robots that we have because he's big and dumb and fast. So don't,
let's talk about I was gonna say let's talk about that. Like you said, you have 7 robots. Like, are there the difference in size, different in brand? Like
the biggest thing is size. So we have from a 10-foot reach to just like a 3-foot reach. And then some are on track, some are not on track. Some are more designed for high speed. Some are designed for, like Milo is really designed for like super precise macro.
Milo's the smaller one?
No, he's on the bigger side. So basically, they're all made by Mark Roberts Motion Control, which is a company in the UK. They're actually owned by Nikon. They, started out, they won an Oscar for the invention of Milo like 20 years ago. Once again, it was the first purpose-built camera robot of this type. All the other robots, literally all other 6 of them, are industrial robots from like car factories.
That's what we were wondering. That
have been just repurposed with the software and the camera pass-throughs of SDI and Ethernet and all this kind of stuff that goes through the arm for this purpose. So every other competitor to Mark Roberts Motion Control is using generally KUKA robots, which are, so it's like Motorized Precision, there's Sisu, there's other competitors now, but Mark Roberts has been around way far longer than everybody else, and their software is definitely the most powerful, which is why we own their robots, because you don't want the secondhand one. You want the best one you can get.
You don't want the eBay
Don't go
robot?
to eBay for that
one. One of our robots was an eBay purchase that I had Mark Roberts then retrofit for me. So one of our little guys, I bought him in Chicago. I flew to Chicago, put him in an Explorer, and drove it back across the country. It's like me and Robbie are going on a road trip together. Yeah. So I do have eBay searches for robots too, but you still need the same software and all that stuff that you would have to pay for. But a lot of them there's a few different brands that make the physical robot. It's all about which is the most stable. Because once again, industrial robots, probably nobody's ever thought about this. They're designed to work nonstop. And if a process, let's say the thing is like taking this thing from here and putting it onto here, and just it wants to do that all day, all night long with the lights off, like that's all he does all day long. I say our robots live the dream. They do all sorts of different things all day long, and they have a lot of time off. So if it could do that thing, 1 second faster each time, multiply that by 365 days a year, blah, blah, blah. So that's why they make these super fast robots, because it's just more productive for automation, and then precision, like it needs to put the thing exactly in the same place. But when it comes to industrial robot, it doesn't necessarily care what happens in the middle here, which is what we're doing with the camera, is usually what happens in the middle. So that's where the company had to do a lot of testing as to which robots were the most stable all around, and they didn't have like weird bumps and things, because when you have a camera on it, you'll see it. You're like, ugh, and you're like, stabilize it. They're not perfect, depending on the shot you're trying to do. The faster you go, the more there's a chance of
Are there
happening.
any sort of like sensors for like safety? Like if somebody gets too close, does it shut off, or is it straight up like
it will hit you?
You have to just don't enter this area. There's a big safety meeting kind of thing. Okay.
I mean, it doesn't go unless somebody literally clicks say go. But if you happen to go into it. I mean, honestly, we've never had an injury of that sort. Like the number one injury is like I'm under the robot and I go and bump my head into it.
Always.
Or the stylist or whoever.
Techno Crane does that too.
Exactly. So that's the number one robot injury, is just like boop, bumping your head against it. Because generally speaking, once again, and especially in our life with high speed stuff, is like lights up. Okay, like there's a lot of attention that's coming on set before you hit the thing. So,
Literally lights, camera, action.
Yeah,
you don't get that many places.
Yeah, so it's like if somebody's anywhere near the robot, you're not going to go, right? You're going to wait a second and go. We've done some crazy stuff with talent though, where like we actually have to shoot talent and like spin around their head and doing weird stuff. So the stunt coordinators come in and be involved, and we do all sorts of...
Give them a perimeter,
Yeah, so for those kinds of shoots, that definitely there's another layer of safety that has to be involved. But they're dumb. They're 100%. If I say go and I say I want you to go straight through the floor, it will try to go straight through the floor. And we've had, some sets that inconveniently were just...
Went through the floor.
Dismantled ahead of schedule.
Wow.
Yeah, we're just... like where the operator put a point by mistake in the wrong place or something, and just like
Does it have like so when you're building that that path, right? Can you run it at a slower speed to see it?
100%, and you should always. Okay. Yes.
It's like you just run at full speed.
No, and it has a 3D. It has a 3D view of what it's going to do too for you. So, but sometimes you're just like, oh, I'm going to make this little change, or I clicked the thing by mistake and put another point on, and I didn't test it. And like, here we go, and then.
Wow.
Yeah. So it hasn't happened for how many times we use the robot. We have a pretty good track record.
Yeah.
So you're saying there was an additional keyframe that was added through the floor?
Yes. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. It was actually, the move was here to here, and then he accidentally put it here again. So it actually, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go from here to here, and then I got to go to get back up there. So it's called a spline curve.
Okay.
So by doing that, it wanted to go down another 6 inches, which is where the set was, and then came back up. So it was like one of those weird things. It's like, oh, whoops, yeah.
So they don't like jerky motions. They want to continue their momentum with the
no,
kind
they're
of
okay
curve.
with jerky stuff. Just it's going to shake depending on how because like you try to stop a camera that's moving super fast without shaking. Yeah, so it's but no, so it's just operator error is a part of the thing, and it's like everybody has to kind of do one mess up at some point. I think our rigs have injured way more cameras than our robot has. So because once again we do a lot of liquids and we do a lot of explosives and all sorts of stuff. So we've had lenses like drink gallons of Pepsi and it's really bad. I'm sorry, Able Cinema. Yeah. But no, we've had lenses get eaten and just literally drink iced tea and whatever, not on purpose, it's one of those things that you're like, okay, here we go. Do we have a new camera body we could throw on there real quick? And here we go.
I mean, so you have the robots, you have lenses, you have lights, and you have a Phantom?
We have a Phantom and we have a red Raptor XL now too. So yeah, so that's all our own. And we still rent lenses because we have some basic macro stuff that we have, but we'll rent fancier glass and be more gentle with it on those days. Yeah.
But you prefer to use your in-house bodies and stuff like don't tell people not to bring their own stuff in.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's also tied up to all the because like the robot even will do run stop on the camera. It'll sync as far as gen lock and everything. You could do that. So like if you do multiple passes, it's literally synced frame accurate to every frame and stuff like that.
Yeah, Red has like a MoCo built in, right?
Yeah. So no, it's fun. I mean, and for us, removing as many things from the equation as possible, the better. As far as oh shit, this camera body has different firmware and whatever. So it's great to have our own stuff.
We talked a lot about the robots, but we haven't talked about the rigging to make this thing happen.
Stuff. Yeah, and
it's that's not something that you just have that you can just pull in. It's it's everything's custom for every job, right?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that what's unique to the stuff that we shoot is that it's so much about what's going to happen in front of the camera and how we make those actions happen repeatedly. So I was the first employee of the garage, and then it was a producer, and then the next person was an effects person full time, basically. So that's how important. And then it was a robot person. So just to show you the sequence of importance, So that's kind of our magic juice is having this in-house effects person that understands what I want to happen in front of the lens and me understanding what I want to happen in front of the lens. So we have a full at the garage now, we have a full effects workshop. We have a Haas CNC milling machine that takes up half a room. We have like lathes and welders and table saws and like you name it, 3D printers of all sorts, resin and regular ones, because we're always like trying to manufacture a thing that's going to do this thing for the creative guy to be happy. And and once again, and nobody at the garage has an engineering degree. We're all artists. Like, it's really funny actually. Like, some people came from audio even. Like, it's kind of a funny thing that none of us are actually trained engineers at all. And I put a little disclaimer at the bottom.
Maybe that's a good thing, you know. Maybe like
because it's creative first.
Yeah.
Like the driving force is always the creative.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we creative first. And then you need to get there via the engineering. It's like there's always the saying of like there's the scientist and then there's the engineer when it comes to like going to space, right? So the scientist is like, let's go to the moon, and the engineer's like, it's not possible. It's like, let's go, we could do it. And like eventually the scientists push the engineer to make it possible, right? So
keeps yelling.
I am the scientist. Matt is the engineer. You know, it's like, oh, I need this to go this fast and do this thing and this accurately or whatever. He's like, I don't know if it could happen. I was like, it could happen. I believe in you. You know, so that is our relationship as far as like I'm creative first. That's where like you know, I use the title visual engineer, and it's like visual engineer, you know, make the thing happen. But now I'm really just director, DP, and photographer. And
So when a client comes to you and they're like, "Hey, we want this crazy thing to happen," how long does that process for you to figure out how long it should take before you can decide, oh, this is what I want to happen, and then give it to Matt?
Right. So they usually don't know what they want, first of all.
They want cool.
Or they have no idea how to get it there, right? Like like, actually, this is a great way to talk about the spinning rig of death right here. So a client came to us and they're like, we want a glass to be there with ice in it, and we want to see a lime wedge drop into it, and then if wants it to feel like we're spinning around this thing as this is happening, then we want to see it land and we want to see it splash out of it. And while this is all happening, you're getting the parallax of moving around it, right? Versus if it was just on a turntable, it's moving, you're not getting parallax, right? It's just, it's spinning, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like, here's a reference. And it was like a non-high speed reference of a camera that was like on an arm that was like rotating around a center point around something. And it's like, great. But to do this at 1,000 frames a second, we got to be moving really effing fast.
Yeah.
So I go to Matt and I'm just like, hey, Matt, this client wants this, you know, and they want it in a week or two, something. It was a really tight, it's always a tight timeline too. Oh, and they're like, we could do it, right? Let's go team, you know? And so we did some calculations like, okay, you know, it's going to be a 15-second spot. Like this part of it is going to be, you know, 5 seconds of it. So to get around, let's say 30 degrees, or, you know, we kind of just guess visually what makes sense, like how much is enough parallax. And it's like we did some calculations. The camera needs to be moving this fast, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh, wow, that's really fast. You know, it's just like, and we're like, how fast can we safely do this? And how do we build this rig? So hence the spinning rig of death, which is the scariest rig we've ever built. So basically it's a pole, center pole, and then it has an arm coming off of it that's spinning around that pole. And on that is the camera, the phantom camera. And that was spinning at about 35 miles per hour in a circle, right?
Jesus.
So, and, you know, 35 miles per hour. Yeah. Have you ever been that close to something moving 35 miles per hour? It's fast. So we're like, we need a big motor. We need this arm. Like, we need a lot of weight to weigh this thing down. Like,
counterweight. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it was spinning with the background across of it.
Right.
So
I mean, that kind of helps you out, right?
I've seen this kind of like on a low budget scale.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they got it for me. And then, right, because that's not complicated enough, moving this whole thing with the background is also, and then it has to be lit evenly as you're moving around, but you can't have cables, right? Because or else so all the lights have to be powered from onboard battery power too. So that's where our custom lighting worked too. So we made these custom LEDs that mounted to it that were super light and could be turned on for like 30 seconds at a time, or they just smoke out. So you know, we've learned how to like, oh, that chunk of copper that's enough for 30 seconds, you know, to dissipate the heat, and it's spinning in the air. It's air cooled, you know. So we used actually like e-bike batteries with like boosters on it. So like we could just like ramp up the lights, The camera itself has a battery on it too, and it's going through a Teradek, so we don't need wireless to get the video from it. And then the tricky part is like the Phantom works on this buffer, so it's just recording constantly into RAM, and then you actually tell it to stop recording. So we have to be able to trigger the camera, but it's moving at 35 miles per hour, and we can't wait till it slows down, or else it'd be too late. So we got like a RC car, remote control with like a little button pusher.
Push it.
Yeah, it was like a little servo pusher. So that was like on the back of the camera, so like we could like trigger the camera when we were done. So it's just like it's all the little things that you're like, oh wait, we didn't think about how to trigger the camera,
All within a week.
In a week, yes, and that's where having the workshop, having the people, having the stuff is super important, because there's no way. And he put in a lot of hours over the weekend. Like it was like one of those.
How much time do you want?
For something like that, we would ideally say, hey, at least 2 weeks, you know.
Yeah.
Now with the CNC mill, and that was before all the fancy tools that we have today. So that was like a very manual hand mill and stuff like that. And never mind sourcing parts, right? Because that's the biggest thing too. It's like McMaster car, which is amazing. It was super overpriced, but amazing.
They deliver like
the same day. Yeah, is insane. For us, it's worth every penny, because sometimes it's like, oh, this motor has to come from China. It's like, okay, well, I need a week for that to get here to be guaranteed. So sometimes we actually, when we're just even treatmenting or bidding a job, we'll start ordering some things just in case. And now we have it. At least worst case, we kind of put in the on the rack, right. Because it's like, that will slow down the whole process if we don't have this one specific thing. So there's always a lot of like, where do you source parts from, and getting that all together. So luckily, Spinning Rig of Death, McMaster had the bearings we needed to hold this thing all together that spin around. It was like 160 RPM that the camera was going around this thing. And then you had to cheat as much as you can too, because like by using a wider lens closer, parallax increases, right? So if like I'm really close to this moving and I don't have to move, I only moved like 4 inches, versus if I'm far away with a 100mm lens, I got to move 4 feet, right? Yeah. To get the same feeling parallax. So trying to find the right balance of like lens choice to everything else, because then also now your background has to get wider if you're on a wider lens. So now I'm spinning a background that has to get bigger. So it's all tied together, and like, but at the end of the day, that rig shows you mechanically, lighting, camera, everything, even the camera tripod head. We had used a really solid tripod head, but as it started spinning, you could just see the camera start bending it and like, wow. So we're like, okay, no tripod head. We're going to mount it at a specific angle, locked in.
Yeah.
Because we don't want my $100,000 Phantom camera. Oh, insurance, sorry. So we had to get rid of the tripod head too. So it's this like fixed mounting at exactly one angle, and that's all the client gets. Because that's the thing. It's also like, can we just look up? No, we can't. We can't. You can push in and post, pan and scan, whatever it is. So we got that shot for the client, which is amazing. And then we're like, with this thing set up, we got to play around with this some more, So we ended up doing another one where we actually pushed the speed even faster. We changed the background color just so it didn't look like we're using exactly the same thing we used for the client, and we just like dropped all sorts of random stuff, rubber balls and like other weird things.
Oh wow!
Did you have to build like some platform to get above, or did you just
no? And then and then from the top of this thing you had to drop the lime like without at the right time. So we actually built a little pneumatic dropper that was also wired in that we could control as well wirelessly to drop the lime at exactly the right time.
So when you're building these rigs, is there something that you're constantly going to, or are you using like a specific like unit track, or what is that stuff called?
Oh, we'll use 80/20. It's like a extruded aluminum base that we use a lot for. It's kind of like Legos for like aluminum. So we use that a lot because it's, once again, that was more of a matte thing to my life. I would like hand weld stuff because like I know steel and steel's strong and that's great, but it was always like a one use thing. Like once you weld a thing together, you're not going to like unweld it.
There's so many pieces with that, like the bolts that slide in and you can just take it off and now you have a 2-foot.
Yeah. So for his thing, it's like he'll build a rig and then most of them will come back apart and we put those parts back on the shelf. We could use them tomorrow for another rig. Some basic things like some catapults and some turntables and stuff to stay assembled on the shelf. But a lot of times it's just like, oh, okay, then we could put that thing on that thing on that thing and put the camera on this thing. So there's, it's a very, I tell people we get literally smarter every day and get more efficient every day because the more we've kind of developed one thing, then the next time we could build on that thing, right? Without even the first time it took us, took longer. But the second time it's like, boom, it's done. Like put it back on set. So
were there any mistakes where things fell off in those moments?
So many times. Everything has fallen off.
I mean, just in the spinning wheel of death world,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting that up to 35 miles an hour, the sound that must be.
And the wind.
Yeah.
You did not expect the wind that comes off of it blowing the very protective foam core wall around this thing that we had around it. And you're just like, and then when we dropped the rubber balls, oh my God, it was like gunshots everywhere. It's like they're bouncing on everything.
Oh, because then they hit the arm after they
Exactly.
bounce.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. It was so cool though. But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of things that break, and some are catastrophic failures where it's just like, oh, we 3D print. Oh, actually, that was funny. Even on the Burger Drop video, I had 3D printed this double catapult that kind of would launch the ketchup and mustard into itself with one motor at the bottom. Here, they were both linked with a gear, so they would go exactly the same from both sides. It was 3D printed. We've had a bunch of 10K lights on this thing. So as we started going, it got a little mushier and mushier because like the gears actually started melting like from the heat. So we don't use 3D printing sometimes because if the heat is a problem. And then the same thing, like chocolate will melt or all, like once again, things that you don't expect like to happen.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, we thought about 99 really cool things, but then we forgot that one thing, and then
I mean, I feel like the camera, like, I mean, I don't know if they care, but I like sometimes I look at the rig of like they've got the camera on two risers out, like over looking down, and it's like one screw.
Yeah,
like
1/4
it's
20 screw
this
that's holding
big
it all
holding
together.
all that together. Like things have to release. You're talking about like
release. Nice way to put it.
I don't know why. Yeah, I mean,
The ground. Yes, we've had lens adapters. I avoid lens adapters where possible because we've had like on the robot going up and down really fast and stopping. Like we've had lenses just pop right, just boop. Whoopsie, right into the tank. Lens is going swimming.
Oh my God.
So then in that moment, are you like, do you just put a new lens
do we have
on it
another
and
lens?
just-
Anybody? Another camera body? Anything? Yeah. No, we just keep moving because
keep
the
moving,
client's
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't make a big deal out of it. Like you
Exactly.
I keep my cool no matter like.
Even if it's like, that you just saw $50,000 just dump into the water, you
it's
just
just
pull
for-
it out and you're like,
yeah.
screw it, go.
Yep.
that's where Rap Drink started. So it's like at the end of the day that you're having the beer and you're like, holy shit.
And then once again, like anything is a surface that we could bolt things to. If like
Yeah, you must. Like, there's no amount of sandbags or even like weights
Yeah.
that can.
There's
No,
got to be
and
some
then-
safeguards you have though, right? Like that, like bolting things down.
Yeah, we have a lot of weights. We have like thousands of pounds of like gym weights, the 35, 45 pound plates and stuff like that. We do bolt to the floor. We have things in our studio now that we actually could bolt stuff. We have a floor drain in the studio too, which is very convenient because we do a lot of liquids of like, oh my God, this is actually here. We haven't talked about this one, but in our old studio, which was on the 12th floor in Manhattan, we had to make this huge, basically tank. It was 8 feet by 8 feet and 2 feet tall. It was something like 10,000 gallons of water in this thing. And it was on the 12th floor in Manhattan. And we're like, how do we get rid of the water? And like, I'm like, if this thing bursts, like this whole building's done. Like we just killed the building. Yeah. So like, luckily it didn't. We're like a half-inch, plexiglass walls might work. Let's go for 1 inch. Like we're like, we don't have scientific calculations on the pressure here, but let's see what they do for big fish tanks. We are always looking on the internet for ways to see what other people do that's the most similar. But yeah, we do a lot of really risky things. We try to be as safe as we can with them, but we know that some things are risky, and that's just like, hopefully it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah,
with that?
It was fine. It was fine. We got through the shot. Actually, the biggest curveball was, and that was the thing. It had to be a tank that was clear. So, like, how do you support that much weight without blocking all the light and everything? So we had to weld this like small steel frame and like whatever. The biggest problem was we filled it with water and it was like super murky, and it's just like, oh shit, we need distilled water that has because looking through 8 feet of water, it's going to get really murky. So we had to suddenly find 10,000 gallons or whatever of distilled water, like
it up to our
literally
sword.
overnight. So we had like 3 groups of PAs and vans going to every Home Depot to get all the spring water that they could find in all the area and calling all of them and bringing it up the elevator. And like the super's like, what's going on? Nothing's going on. We're thirsty.
Really thirsty.
Yeah. And then when we went to drain the tank, apparently where we're draining it to eventually backed up and like in the basement and like they didn't.
I mean, that's a ton of water. Yeah.
Water. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your studio here because you mentioned a good drain system is something you need. need? Any other little like tidbits of tools or items you feel like are necessary to have?
Well, for us, so a drain, a lot of compressed air, because I was talking about a lot of the pneumatics and stuff like that. So we have a really big air compressor that's like hidden away because they're loud, right? So like we don't want it near the set. So we have all these different tie-ins all around the studio where you can just get air like waiting for you, which is great.
Yeah.
Even in the kitchen, because we're always like filling balloons with like Pepsi or whatever it is. Like we do all sorts of weird stuff that you need to pressurize stuff. Power, we kind of discussed that a little bit. Power being very important because we do a lot of stuff with a lot of power. Ventilation, the kitchen is a full commercial kitchen basically that we have. That was like the most expensive room that we built out, was basically because you need the commercial hood thing, and like that had to go all the way to the ceiling of the building, and there's this whole thing. We talked about the Domino's oven coming in and having to put that in, but it's like, it's a Domino's oven. Like you need to be able to vent it, just like a commercial, or like Kentucky Fried Chicken has their own special fryer. So it's like, you got to be able to put that thing in, and like, because we're always shooting food and somebody has to make the food, and that's always part of our challenge. And actually, funniest story, we moved into our current studio during COVID, and trying to get inspections for the kitchen was like a 6-month delay. Basically the hood was operational, but they couldn't turn on our gas until we got it signed off that the hood was operational by the fire department. So for 2 shoots, we ripped out the whole kitchen, rented all electrical appliances, all gas appliances. We rented all electrical appliances, ran power from the cam lock, did the whole thing, did the shoot, ripped it all out, and then like, the client's like, we want to do another day of, chicken wings. It's like, rented it all over again, put it in again, and then shot it again and ripped it out, and then we finally got our inspection, and like, thank God we got our gas turned on. But yeah, so sometimes you got to make kitchens in places that don't have kitchens too, so that's always a nightmare. And if you've ever cooked indoors, like a burger or something, the smoke could be a thing. So trying to vent things is always a challenge too, because sometimes on set we need to be cooking stuff, or having fire, so we have some weird rigs that we've made to just suck, air out the window and just like, okay, great, So yeah, there's never a dull moment when you're doing.
You said something earlier about Dexter rooms.
Oh yes, a lot of plastic tarping, yes. Because we have liquids colliding and obviously like inches away from a lens and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of plastic wrap on everything, So literally trying to and kiddie pools. We have a lot of kiddie pools to catch all the liquid, because if you're like shooting, 40 gallons of Mountain Dew up in the air, then it's like, where does it land? So we have a specific kiddie pool on Amazon we love that we would buy. They're like $30. It's great because they're like disposable.
Amazing.
Once you've had like milk on a kiddie pool and it's like, it's gross, it's just like, you're like, bye. Like, I'm not going to try to clean this thing out. But we do have like a slop sink in the new studio, which is great, because before it was just like the one kitchen sink is all we had for everything.
Man.
We have a hose, like water hose too, because we have
you must. It's like
off.
the cleanup on these things is like, because when you were talking earlier, you're saying like, half-second shot, quarter-second shot, but then there's
the mess
syrup,
lives
there's
on
everything
for a lot longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Don't be a PA for us. There's a lot better places to be a PA than for us, because the cleanup. We'll like move the robot after the shoot, and it's just like, look at all that stuff down there. It's like when you moved your couch for the first time, or
are you just like, when you're in that like battle mode, like, and it just goes and you have to reset it, you just clean the area you need to clean and just let everything burn?
Oh yeah.
my God.
It gets like, yesterday was like, or was it 2 days ago, whatever, it was just like Pringle chips, it was just like everywhere, just like all over the damn place. And oh my God, what was the worst one? It was like it was a matcha powder shoot. So like we're literally making these big like pillowy clouds of matcha powder, which is so fine. Like everything was in the studio was green. It was like, have you ever done drywall and sanded? Like, but it was green dust on everything for like a month afterwards. It's just like, the cleanup could be, and now we've gotten smarter. Hence the reference to Dexter Kill Room, where literally we've done like made a room in a room, like in the studio, where basically we'll get like pop-up tents and do walls around it of plastic, and then put an air filter system like for industrial like wood shops and stuff like that inside of there.
It's like a paint booth almost.
Yeah, so we're basically shooting in a paint booth with high-speed lights and cameras and robots and the whole
It
thing.
makes so
have
much
to.
sense saying it out loud, but you would never I wouldn't think about it. You're like, I need to do this shoot. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
But it's New York City, and cleaning up is a bitch, and roaches and mice and shit. So you have to have stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That one maple syrup shoot we did once was like, it was like everything was sticky for like ever. And there's like mice and like things just came out of nowhere, like cockroaches and stuff.
I feel like anyone who hires you, because I know you're saying like they don't really know what they want.
Yeah.
I feel like when they come here, they're like they don't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're like
Yeah.
they come onto the set and they're like, been on millions of sets. They come onto your set, they're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, and that's really true. So if you're a producer and you're calling up the garage and you're like, hey, I have this crazy thing I want to do. What do they expect? Like, what's the crew size? And
We do a lot of educating, like, let me hold your hand. Let's talk about what this really means in real life, because so many times they have no clue. They just see the end result and they're like, oh, we want that. And it's just like, well, that's really complicated and expensive because only so many people could do it. But no, there's a lot of hand holding and especially nowadays, like traditionally it's like, oh, you had the agency that reached out to you and the agency producer has done these before because all they do is just KFC or whatever it is. But now we go to direct to brand a lot of times too, where it's just like, a certain brand will reach out to us directly and be like, oh, Cheetos, whatever it is. Oh, we want, this whole thing, fiery ball of Cheetos and they have the camera spin around it or whatever. It's just like, we could do that. But, and then there's like, they go on and off. And that's where our producers, our EPs are really good about like holding their hand and just like, let's explain. And just like, because when they send the bid, it was just like, why does that need to be 2 days? It's just like, let me explain. So to get this takes this much time, to do this takes this much time, and then blah 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 blah. So yeah, no, there's a lot of particulars, and a lot of times we get like actually agency people reach out to us, and we have to, and they're like, we're going with you guys because like what you're doing.
Right.
We have no idea what we're doing. Like we feel really good, and that's a big part of like my treatment process as a director is also talking through what is really complicated here, what could go wrong here, like, and asking the right questions on those creative calls as to like, but what do you mean by this, or what do you mean by powder and this, or whatever it is, because like those intricacies, like even just like the burger drop video as an example, like if you change the ingredients around a little bit, like, oh, you have corn or something, it's just like, well, how to hold corn up in the air if it's just a bunch of kernels, like it changes everything. It's like we might need a totally different rig to just change one ingredient, and then if you wanted the corn below the lettuce, that might make the way they land different. It's all so intricate in like how it sits together that the more you do it, the better you get at it, but you mess up a bunch of stuff along the way, because it's like
it's a learning process.
And so many times, like that's why we have the space too, is like we'll literally go over and like, can you make Velveeta cheese fly off a chip? Like whatever, like what is the viscosity of Velveeta cheese, and like will it actually do anything if you put it on a Doritos or whatever it is? Like, so many times it's like we're like Instacart, Doritos, Velveeta, real quick, and then like try stuff out.
Practicing.
So it seems like you do a lot of tests and stuff like that on your weekends, and like you said, you use the spinning rig to like do your own shit. Do you have like a YouTube or something people can just watch all your behind the scenes stuff? That like
Instagram is definitely the go-to for me, and now TikTok too. But Instagram is definitely the place to that's what got me here, honestly, in so many ways. Like after the burger drop, Instagram, it's kind of this similar timing to you guys, like where the Instagram thing was really blowing up and like feeding, and I think a lot of it is just like what I'm doing today. Yes, I do it slightly more advanced and technologically, but I wasn't the first one to do this, right? Like it's like TV commercials of food have been happening for many years before me. They're getting fancier and fancier as the robots and other things get better, but I was the first one to show it to the world, like kind of pull back the curtain and be like, hey, this is how this thing happened, and that's where I hit it at the right time, where like Gen Z and all, like
it wasn't CGI. We really do this.
Exactly. And there's, oh my God, so many Reddit threads about like, why not do it in CGI? So
Because you did that, because you brought it out to the word, do you have a lot of people DMing you like, hey, Steve, like teach me the process, like how this is done, or people who are trying to get into your crew and like, do you teach classes on this? Like, what's that process?
we have a failed company. It's called the Garage Learning. We had a Kickstarter. We tried. We really tried. Where we were trying to, once again, inspire, either side of the equation, right? You have the engineer that is just like, I'm so bored in my engineering job. I want to do that big creative awesome thing. And it's like, cool, man, but so go to film school. It's like, so much of it needs that base to it. You know, it's like way easier to go from the creative side to the engineering side without a thing to drive it. Like the engineer without the scientist is kind of like, they don't have a purpose, you know? So I think it's usually the other way around. I think is easier as far as like creative leads the technology. Occasionally like a new technology comes out that then could be like allow for new things. But so yeah, no, I answer almost every DM on Instagram that I get to. I very much like to support new people. We have interns at the studio. We do a lot of stuff with students and tours and stuff like that show them. Now it's actually really cool in our complex. We are NYU's opening their Martin Scorsese virtual production film school for Tisch. So we're already talking to them about doing collaborative stuff with their students and the virtual production and all that stuff. Yeah, very cool. But yeah, no, we generally want to inspire, and people have reached out so many times, like, you inspired me to go down this whole path and buy a robot. I was like, ooh, we should have reached out first. No.
I think that's the way I reached out to you. I was like, hey, I don't mean any offense by this. You want to come on our show?
Yeah. So then you obviously see there's a growing market for this stuff. Like it's only going to get bigger.
There's a lot of people that are excited by the idea, but once they realize how difficult it is,
it's a ton of work.
It is really hard. It is really, and there's so many layers that have to be right. Like I always say, like if I didn't have those 10 years as a still photographer first, like I could never do what I do. Like I needed to understand how to light food, how to deal with food, how to produce food shoots, like beverage and all the intricacies of just that as one frame as a still photographer, to be able to make that happen with the camera whipping around and all the other things that are happening, right? It's like, it's something that you build over time. As I say, every shoot I get smarter, right? Like it's not something you jump into to where I'm at right now. I didn't jump into it either, right? Like I started as a still photographer, then I got my first Canon 5D Mark II and started shooting video on it. Originally did my first necessary music video. You have to get into film. You have to do a music video or documentary. You choose one.
It's the path.
Something that doesn't need sound to start, right? So actually, did a music video for this girl that eventually got famous, which is amazing. And then. You build over it. You got to build over time. And so I feel like nowadays, so many of the young kids are like, I want to do it now. And it's just like, yeah, you could do a half-assed version of it now. And it's amazing to me what you could do on your iPhone with really good After Effects and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, man, find your path, dude. Don't do what I do. Do what you do. And that's the number one thing I tell people. It's like, find inspiration in what I do and then make it your own. That's
don't try to replicate the shot. Just build on it.
Yeah, don't do a bad version of what I did.
I feel like there's a lot of layers because the market's there for it. There's a high demand, but the patience of Gen Z is a factor, and then the fact that you have to also think about the rigging system, right? Because I think you also had a trampoline on one of your.
Oh, so many things. Yeah. We play with all sorts of things to throw stuff and whatever, whether it be rubber or bouncing or not. It's but no, I think it is the reality that it's the journey, not the end place, right? Like leverage what you know today and the equipment you have today. You don't need the fancy thing to make the best image you could understand how to make. It's like, I only have my first camera was serious camera was like a Red Epic Dragon. It's like, okay, that'll do 240 frames or whatever it was. It's like, okay, how do I make this shot for this brand, Cheetos, whatever it is, work with 240 frame camera? How do I change physics, or how do I concentrate on a moment that works? Because you could do that, it's like you have to bend the creative to the stuff you have.
It seems like it has to be like a really collaborative effort. Like if you can't figure something out, that's why you have Matt. If he can't figure something out, that's why you've got all of you guys. Like you're saying, the creative, you need that. Yes. The engineering comes later. It's like. Yeah. All of you guys must have these crazy solutions for things. So
right.
Like that.
And sometimes it's like, okay, the camera does this, the rig does this, and it's just like, wait, how do we get a light in there? It's like, without the camera shadowing it as the robot moves, and so it really all has to be, and coming together, and how big does the background. So like we actually have a resident production designer in our space as well too, because it's just like, how can we do that as well? It all has to come together, and. Okay. If the food doesn't look right, it all falls flat, and that's the challenge to it all. Is like, there's you could do it in CGI, and it's going to look CGI, or you could do it the really hard way. Like I choose to do it the hard way because to me it's worth the effort, right?
More satisfying.
It's the magic too.
Yeah.
But you have to really want to do it that way. Really, like you have to see the art in that, right? And that's the thing. It's like I am making art first. Yes, I'm using all this stuff and whatever it is, and once again, there's times where just like the technology isn't doing it right, and I'll go in there and I'll put my hands on the thing and just like, all right, here we go. And funny enough, actually, just to shoot, we call it the human assist, where like where a rig isn't quite doing what it's like. Oh, okay, we had this thing that was like launching paint at a like container of paint or whatever it is from behind, is splashing it, and it's just like we tested it with water. We never tested it with paint, and the paint was so much harder and thicker that it just was like falling short of it every time. And I was just like, we need more power. And he's like, Matt's like, I give it all the power. And I'm like, all right, I'm going in there. So I literally grabbed the arm of the catapult and I'm just like, when you fire it, I'm just going to help push it,
Oh, nice.
And oh my God, it was great until like afterwards, like, oh my God, that was so great. And then it splashed all over me. I was like covered in paint, whatever. Let's
go again.
I'm just like, let's go. That shirt still is stained, today. Yeah, it's just like, all right, it's working. Like, let's just go. Who
Hanging
cares?
on the wall.
We just got to get through the shot. Like our rigs only have to work as long as, okay, moving on. Great, done. It could fall apart and it doesn't matter.
I guess that's interesting too, Kyle. You said like you have to be creative before an engineer, because an engineer is going to think about how you build this thing to last.
Right.
Forever.
Oh yeah, a real engineer. Oh,
Yeah.
forget about it. It's like, no. It just has to be good enough for like 2 hours.
Has to last. It's got to last for this 30-minute thing,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
if it breaks at 40 minutes, who cares? We
Yeah,
got
they
it.
will over-engineer the hell out of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no. It's not going to be used every day for a year. It's like,
Yeah,
no, it's going
exactly.
to be used once for 2
That's
hours and
awesome.
we're done. Yeah, so it is a definite.
So you're like running things at the theoretical limit of like what it probably can handle, especially like with the electricity. You're saying you're like, these LEDs are like, we can turn them on for 15 seconds and that's it.
They might overheat. Yeah.
30 seconds they're on fire. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't go to lunch while you're,
Literal fire watch. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a need for all this equipment and stuff, but I'm thinking like if someone's just wants to get into motion capture and they're starting off, is there like a standard motion control? Sorry, motion capture.
Motion capture is a totally different cool thing.
But motion control, like, is there standard gear or stuff you should look into? Like, I know someone mentioned like the mini bolt to us and like our channel of like questions and asks. Like, is that stuff you recommend?
Mini bolt is pretty high up on that pedestal as far as like what honestly your most
big
basic
investment.
pan tilt motorized head is your first step. Like it could be anything that's a programmable Kessler crane, whatever it is. Like that was like my first thing was a motorized Kessler crane. It was like the first thing I did.
no, there's
like,
the Edelchrome.
Edelchrome, that thing
Yeah.
is sweet too. Like once again, I go to NAB every year to just go look at the new tools and fun things. But like we've done shoots that feel like a robot. Actually, it was like a year ago. We went to this guy in Jamaica. Was like, "Hey man, we want to shoot some burgers flipping in fire and whatever it is." But we don't have a robot budget. And I'm just like, okay. So we actually made a custom like kind of carbon fibery pan tilt head that we could actually pack in a case and fly with us to Jamaica, because I'm like, I want to go to Jamaica. It's December. Come on. And it looked great, man. It was just like pan, tilt, and focus. That's all it is. We ran it through Dragon Frame. So we were able to just do that. And then we had one little pneumatic to flip the burger. And once again, the most basic version of it. And you could do it. Like, it's just, you could do it. But I would say to most people, it's just like, pan and tilt buys you a lot if it's done the right way. Like, yes, moving around something is cool if in the right context. But I usually say the camera movement only makes a shot like 20% better. Like if the action in front of the camera is right, like then you're most of the way there. And
So will that program there's a whole bunch of different heads that have like wheels that you can. Do you need anything to adapt that to be able to be repeatable, or is it just a program you can plug into any kind of like?
No, it actually
like
have to have a motor to be able to control. It controls the motor itself. So you have to find a way to adapt a motor to whatever it is you're using.
Okay.
So we actually have some like Manfrotto heads that we actually took off like the knobs and put adapted motors to them, so you could just do pan tilt, on like a normal head. We didn't build the head.
I'm just thinking like a Libra head, like they have like the remote person controlling it from like however far away. Like, can you plug into that and control it with a computer?
No, not
Okay.
easily. Yeah, that's where like the Technodolly comes in play because it's like actually encoded. You need something that actually knows exactly where each motor is in time and space and have a timeline and stuff like that.
And motors are just like off the shelf electric motors, or you
Like
have,
stepper motors, that you
yeah.
get from China, real cheap.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's still a lot out in the internet. If you look at my YouTube page and stuff as far in the garage learning stuff that we had done, that a lot of people are still like, "This is still amazing. I found it." I'm like, "That's 5 years old," but just the baseline of like motors, pneumatics, and different things that you could use. And that's the thing. That's how we started. We started with like the shittiest rig that we could make to do the thing for 1 hour, and and maybe sometime a little post on top of it, and you could make it even better. But yeah.
That's awesome.
But you don't need all these fancy tools to get started.
It just makes it more efficient.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like the biggest thing for us is like, we have to do that really cool shot, but no, we have to do 10 of them in a day with approvals and client and blah, 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 and different flavors and whatever it is. Like our shoots are like, if you do the math, I forgot what it is. It's just like every minute on set is like $150 or something like that when you include the pre-production and the all that stuff. So if one rig delays you 10 minutes, like you should spend more money on that rig if you can, because sometimes when you're doing it, it's like hard to justify it. But I always use that to justify more food stylist assistants because they're like, oh, if they can't keep up and I can't shoot fast enough, then we're all waiting.
Less clients. You don't need 10 clients.
I'm going to not say anything about that.
You said going to Jamaica. Do you go out of the U.S. a lot?
Well, we have a studio in Mexico, in Guadalajara, Mexico, that we opened during right around COVID.
Oh, nice.
Great timing. And we were supposed to go like once a month because it's like, but then we didn't travel at all. So there we basically have, it's a small version of what we are. It's a partnership with a couple other companies there, but basically we have a studio. We have 2 robots. We have Bolton and Bolt Jr. We have an effects workshop. We trained actually an effects person there as well. Funny enough, though, like what you mentioned about the engineer, he was an engineer, and we were like, no, just
Cool.
quicker, the quicker version of it. But luckily, Mexican culture leads to that understanding a little more. I'm Cuban myself too, and Cuban culture, trust me, there's a lot of rafts made very interesting ways.
Oh my God!
But and once again, if you've ever been to Cuba, it's like you have put a Russian car engine in a Chevy, whatever. It's part of our being is to rig stuff in these ways.
That's awesome.
It's like in the blood. But so Mexico is like, because to go to the middle of nowhere to do the complex stuff we have, there's a lot of basic tools and understanding we need the people to have. So we felt like enough clients were asking for us to shoot stuff offshore for talent reasons or whatever it is, or locations or whatever you need, so that we found this partnership to be a really smart thing to do in Mexico for us, because once again, it's easy to get stuff to Mexico too, as far as like versus like Poland or somewhere else, or and the time zone is really forgiving as well. And from LA, it's super easy for people from LA. So it's a small version of it there. We try not to go anywhere, honestly, otherwise, because it's just really painful. But Chicago, Atlanta, Florida, there's robots in all those places, and we know all those people.
Nice.
We try to make friends with everybody that has a robot in the country or anywhere else. For actually Mark Roberts, the guys that make the robots, we host a annual summit in our studio where all the operators from all over the world come, and we had like 80 people last year. We did it for the first time.
Oh, wow.
So it's an advanced training where we basically just share ideas and how we do different things. And
That's awesome.
because once again, we want what we learned. Motion control has been around for a long time. A lot of shoots went really badly early on, so a lot of producers are like, "Oh, it's an overtime machine," they call it. And if anybody has a bad motion control experience, it hurts motion control in general.
Everywhere,
Yeah, because it's just like, oh, they didn't know which robot it was or what operator it was. Like, who knows whose fault it was? But they just say, oh, no, motion control, we don't have the budget or the time for that. But then they get on one of our shoots and they're like, oh my God, this is so great. This is amazing. It's just like, well, there's a lot of intricacies there. Not all motion control is created equally. Not all teams are the same. So for us, having that knowledge and that, everybody gets smarter helps everybody.
That's
It's about
awesome.
utilizing the tool you have,
Yeah.
right, and knowing how to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that summit is for motion control operators, but does it have a name?
No, it's just
it's just-
the Mark Roberts Motion Control Advanced Summit, whatever it is. But the funny thing is, I was like, oh my God, if this room like caught fire, like there would be no motion control operators in the world. Like motion control go back to the dark ages.
Oh, God.
because it was like literally all the geeks were all there together. You know, the guy that wrote the software, like the CEO of the company, like everybody was there. It was just great. It was
That's
amazing.
really cool.
You know, because once again, I think it's only going to get better over time. Like as I was telling you, like there's actually an iPhone app now. I could like move my iPhone and then the robot will replicate what I do, because the physical hardware can't change much. Like there's only a limit to gravity and acceleration and how strong motors are.
Yep.
So it's really more about how quickly you could program it, how cool can it start tracking stuff, like use AI and camera tracking. If you were asking a little bit about safety, like we're playing with some things with them for like putting sensors on the camera. So like, let's say I'm doing something with talent. Let's say the talent's running down a hallway. I'm trying to chase them from behind them on a long track move or something like that. What if that talent stopped or tripped or something? The robot's going to keep going unless I hit
so you gotta
there's
kill-
e-stops, but we're talking about putting on like a distance measurer basically. So if it gets within 12 inches, it'll kill the power to the robot and stuff like that, or lasers or whatever it is.
Got to talk to the guys that make Roomba.
Yeah, exactly. But we're talking about like I want to do some shoots that haven't had the opportunity yet, where we get really close to people, like with these probe lenses, and do some really like more for sports and kind of really cool stuff like that. But like if you want somebody running, like somehow you have to be like, yeah, it's really hard, but it would be so epic if I could do it right, but like for that, safety would be a huge.
Almost like them running in place on something else that's moving the whole rig.
But
like,
even still, they're running, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's
yeah.
just
So
a
it's just
certain,
a slight variation if
Yeah.
you're super close.
yeah. So like obviously there's directions that can help you. Like running into them is worse than running
Pulling
like
away,
kind of
yeah.
like bumping in. So if you even see like, so our robots are also used on like the Glambot thing, like the red carpet.
Oh, that's you guys?
The same kind of robots, same
Okay.
people like in LA though. But we do Glambot stuff as well. And so that same thing, like the rule of thumb there is like, if you're gonna have Lady Gaga in front of you, you start the camera as close as it would ever get to her and you go away. You don't go from
okay.
away towards her.
Yeah, because you don't
right?
like if they take one step, that's it's like you can't.
Exactly. So stuff
Especially
like
with
that.
the probe lens. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's a piercing bot at that
Is it
point.
time for my colonoscopy?
Are there any other features you want to add to these?
I mean, I think safety being the biggest ones as
Yeah.
far as like get them to be smarter. And once again, that's also a problem in industrial robotics as it is too. I mean, most of these robots are like in cages in factories, but they're out in the open with us. So just if we could have like using actually motion capture or something that has cameras that see everything in the room that's with you. And it's like, oh, collision alert, like boom,
interesting,
or
yeah.
something that would be cool. But then it just comes down to like, if I could program it even faster, because it's like there's so many intricacies of just like going from here to here, and they're like, oh, but how does it pan and how does it tilt?
Yeah. When you said like the programming, it's like you're going by hundredth of a second.
Yeah, as far as like the timing of actual events and things that are happening, because like, oh, that little bit of juice goes that way at that point, and that's exactly the moment I want to, But we're also dealing with a lot of organic things, so like each strawberry is different, like right, like
yeah.
they're like that's actually a pain point. Like each patty of beef is going to be slightly different if you measure it and you cook it the same way. Like so, it's like something that might have flipped just perfectly and landed like right, the next one might not, and it's like so. It's like there's really a scientific method to a lot of the stuff that we really do, to keep it like, and which again, the average person would never think about.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, because when you make changes, like when you're talking about the burger video and things launching and coming, it's like a thousandth of a second change. It makes a drastic difference in your video.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when you start learning about how to cheat. And, sometimes we're just like, okay, we could do it that way, but maybe it could just be a lock off. And then in post, they're going to, pan and scan it or whatever, there's, or like, oh, we could do it all in one shot, or we could do like, 4 different shots and then one grand finale that's not as big of a landing or whatever it is. Like, yeah.
I mean, do you consider that CGI when that's not really CGI?
Compositing is not CGI.
It's
yeah.
compositing, right?
It's all the real stuff. Yeah, we definitely like compositing.
I feel like compositing would solve a lot of problems sometimes.
Do you do that in house? Is that like
No, we actually don't
you're
have
not a post house at all?
Yeah, we'll handle post in house, but it's all freelancers that we outsource to. But one of our partners in Mexico is a CGI company too. So if we do
cool.
need elements of CGI, we definitely use that. Because sometimes it's just like if something is just not possible, like just because of optics or whatever it is, like, oh, you want to be this close to a BlackBerry, and it's just like, okay, well, optically, if you're that close to a BlackBerry, the BlackBerry behind is going to be out of focus, or things like that. Like there's just even an F64 or whatever the hell you could do. So, there's certain things that just like, oh, okay, if that's a mandate from the client, like there's only so much we could do. Yeah, you could either do it by compositing, you shoot one BlackBerry, you shoot the other BlackBerry, you shoot the other thing, and you put that all together. We could really do some cool stuff with the robots too, with scaling. So like I could do a shot of, a model, like which they did in like Harry Potter and stuff like that, like parts of Hogwarts and stuff were like a model size. And then the people were shot on blue screen and they just kind of put the two things together. So, a lot of the tricks that we use are based on old VFX tricks, so it's kind of cool to see how they used to do it on film, and then the same things apply. Like it's
optical printing was one of the coolest classes we ever took in college. That was
same with an Oxberry and stuff like that. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I'm sad I never went to film school. Photography school is cool too, but it's different.
I was in school at the time when it was like film, traditional film, and it was like the border when they were getting rid of that. So I would like learn something and be like, that class doesn't exist anymore. And then I'd be like, well, why did I just learn that? And then so I moved over to film because they were still working 1635, but that was also the bleeding edge of that. So
film is cool.
What do a lot of these people learn about now? Like if they want to get into what you do, like what are they looking into? What advice are you offering?
How do you start? I mean, it's the basics, right? You have to be able to tell a story first. So that's the thing I tell people. It's just like you gotta either, whether it's through photography or through filmmaking or whatever it is, like number one, it's like a story. If like it could be the coolest rig in the world, but if you're not telling us the right story, then it's useless. Like to a brand, it's like, oh, okay, ketchup and blah 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 exploding, but like, does that make you want to eat that? Like that. That's so many times it's so easy to get carried away with the effect or the thing that the story is flat, and therefore why even do it? And why like a brand is not going to pay you to do it? So number one is like storytelling first. That's why I would tell the engineers that are like, I want to do it. It's like, you could help as a rigging person on a shoot, but if you want to do what I do, I am a creative first, right? Like I'm telling a story first.
Yes.
And that was the biggest learning curve for me. It was like the edit, so many times I'm like, oh, shoot this and this angle. And it's like, but no, that would never work in a cut. And I only had to learn that by doing a lot of really bad cuts or hiring editors. And it's like, holy shit, they made my thing look so much better.
Was it weird switching from like, I mean, telling a story with a photo is way different than telling a story. It's with the time based. Like, was it weird to kind of like change your brain into this like longer format?
Yeah. Well, it's not that much longer. Most of the things we do are 15 seconds or whatever. But no, it was 100%. Of just like where and how to use an edit to cheat sometimes too. But it's funny, I still love the one shot because like to me that's so much easier to think about. Of just like, oh yeah, we start here, we go here, we go here, all at once. Like why do we need a cut there?
It also feels like of this work, it's like the top. Like if you can do something in camera in one shot.
Yeah. Once again, blood for pain. How do I make it as hard as possible?
I mean, even if you look at movies, people like that 15-minute shot. They're like, "That's badass."
Yeah.
Like that's people talk about.
People talk about it. It's just like it's impressive because everyone does know like the choreography that goes into that between the teams.
No, and so much of the things that we bid on is like they want to know what's the transition between those shots. Like like so many clients are actually asking about that too. So it's like, oh, we don't want to just cut to a shot. Like how do we go inside of it, go around it? Because that's very hip and stuff.
The strawberry
right
crosses the line.
Yeah, exactly. Wipe and we wipe again, and then we wipe again. Yeah. So, but sometimes it's like we go into the liquid, then we come out of the liquid. Stuff like that. But that's a big part of like what they lean on us for. Is just like, okay, here's the things that we want to get into the spot and the original storyboards, but like how do we get between them? And I'm just like, oh, we could do a crazy whip pan and we could follow the thing, and
Has anybody ever brought you an idea that you're like, oh, that's really cool? Like you'd never thought about something like that, and they were like, you're like, you should come work for us.
No, I mean, so we get briefs from an agency or from a brand of like, oh, this is kind of what we want. And there's the briefs that I'm like, okay, yeah, I know how to do that, whatever. Then the briefs that are like, oh my God, this is gonna be so cool. I want this job, So yeah, there's definitely when we're more super powered when we're powered by great creative to start from an agency or a brand. A brand that knows who they are, and a brand that also wants to push the limits, because so many times they say they do, and then they dumb it down, and end up with like a really dumb hybrid idea that has one good shot in it, and like the rest is boring.
Any specific story where the brand wanted to push the idea and you were like all gun ho for it?
Domino's is one of those for sure. Just to call them out, and Pepsi are the two probably brands that like. Pepsi literally hires us to do R&D shoots, like where we actually just mess around. And because that's the thing, like I could think of ideas, I could storyboard ideas, you could whatever, but like until you actually get it in front of the camera and start just messing around and like, oh, what if we filled a water balloon with Pepsi and then okay, that's cool, we pop it, all right, but what if we spin the water balloon for a while first at like a centrifugal speed, then we pop it, then like, ooh, it spreads out and does this and that. Okay, now what if I put a camera below it, and then what if I hit it with a stream of liquid at the moment that's spreading out? It feels like this like crazy like sci-fi thing, you know, like so like without that time of like actually trying to do it, I mean without like we'll literally throw one big light at it and just like whatever and play with water, but just like how do you shape this stuff, you know?
That's such a cool thing because I mean you're putting a camera under something, but then when you like I don't know if you composite it now it looks like a top shot. Like I remember being in school and somebody being like, if you let the paint drip and then you flip the canvas, now the drips go up. And it was like, it's something that's like, you've seen it a million times, but like you might not actually visualize it until you've done it by yourself on accident even. Like that's such a cool, I can't visualize this 3D fucking.
And even one of the things we did too is like, because once again, the Phantom Flex 4K or the VO 4K are the most traditional cameras that you'll see that for what we shoot. And it's just like, oh, but what does that look like at, you know, and it could do 1,000 frames at 4K, which is awesome raw. So in like 6 seconds, you're filling up a 72 gigabyte buffer. Jesus. Yeah. So we'll have shoots where we shoot like 5 terabytes. It's crazy with one camera, not like a multicam shoot. Yeah. But I was just like, okay, we've seen liquids, we've seen all the food, all this stuff. We've seen it at 1,000 frames. We've seen it at 1,000 frames. Like, what does it look like at 20,000 frames? You know. So we recently started playing with the Onyx Phantom, which you can't even buy. You can only rent it. You can only rent it. It's rental only, and it's one of these cameras that could do like 100,000 frames, like slow mo guys stuff, which we've done collaborations with Gavin and from the slow mo guys too, which is really fun. But yeah, it did change things. Like, so looking at liquid dripping, let's say your paint dripping thing, and you flip it upside down and you look at it at 10,000 frames, like that's new. Like visually to you, it's so different. And, you know, in an edit, and especially on social media, which is a lot of stuff we do ends up on TV and social and cut downs and blah, 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 16:9, 9:16, all the things. But that's what we thrive on, is like, how do we make it different? You know, like I don't want to do the same campaign for 20 years, you know, in exactly the same way, the same math. Like, no, I want it every time we do it to be better, but it'd be different. And that's where so much in the edits, like talking about going back to editing a little bit, is just like, I turn the sound off first. I'm just like, what are the visuals doing? Because on social media, most people have the sound off anyway. So like I drive, you know, editors crazy, because at first they're like, where's the track that we're going to edit to? It's like, no, just edit visually. Like then we'll find a track that works, or make a custom track or whatever it is. Or you tweak it based on the sound. But like for me, it's just like the visuals need to speak on their own. Same thing on a billboard in Times Square. Like
for sure,
there's no sound, right? Like so much of what we do is very graphic based. But once again, how do we turn that upside down? You know, how do we play with gravity? How do we play with frame rate? How do we play with time, gravity, space, all the things, movement, you know, to make it feel different? And that's what I love doing.
And is that what a typical day in the garage is like when you don't have a client? Is it just R&D? You're just like in there, just like, fuck it, let's do this today. Let's try this out.
100,000%. Yes, we are always toying, playing, doing stuff, you know, all day long. And now the new toy is the virtual production wall. You know, so it's like, okay, how do we, you know, either make an Unreal world that's on the LED wall, and then we shoot something in front of it, and then how do we shoot something that we layer by putting it on the wall and then do something else? And like, you know, how could, once again, it's a new tool to bend reality, you know, like, but it's still in camera, you know, so then, the reflections on the liquid are right because it's on the wall behind it. We're not blue screening stuff, and, you know, all that. And we actually have one of the few walls that you could do 240 frames a second on an LED wall, because flicker and all the panes. It's like, like it's funny how some of the most basic things will mess you up, you know? So like, you know, gen lock, right? You guys know about gen lock. That's how you you know, whatever. It only goes up to 60 frames a second. There is no standard for locking cameras above 60 frames a second. So we had to create our own clock system to be able to clock the wall at 240 frames a second, with the computer 240 frames a second, with the camera at 240 frames a second, so that when the shutter goes off, the wall's in the right place, the frame from the computer is in the right place. Once again, you think, I was like, clocking, how hard could it be? That was our first 3 months on the LED wall.
Oh my God.
It was just like trying to get the clocking right without any tearing or flicker or anything on the wall at 240 frames, because of how, and once again, now your margin of error is so much tighter, because you're, you know, and we're trying to build our system to go up to 1,000 frames a second, because like the new LED wall processor driver chips that they've announced could say they'll do 1,000 hertz. So we're trying to future proof it, but like your margin for error gets so much tighter. So it's like literally a $10,000 science clock we're using, like this crazy like GPS, atomic clock to be able to create this thing. It's like, and it's like you would think, oh, Genlock, easy, just plug it in, turn it up to 240, whatever it is, but but it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
That's
man,
crazy.
you're pushing the limits of like what all
So
of
much
these things
fun.
can do.
It's
Yeah.
so much fun. But then you're like, some days you're just like, why am I doing this? Can I just shoot 24 frames like everybody else?
It's because you're the avant-garde for a lot of people that are learning this stuff and figuring it out. So, like, I wonder, Steve, when people want to look up this stuff and find you and research you, where do they look? Where do they go on the garage?
So there's Steve Giralt on Instagram, the garage, the something dash garage. I forget what the handle is.
We'll put it down
We'll give it to
below.
you. Yeah. And then there's Garage Motion Control on Instagram as well, which is if people are just interested in just the robot rental stuff. Then TikTok is Steve Giralt 6. Because I don't know who the other first five. I think there was one of them was me, and I forgot the password. But why not? And then just our website, the garage.tv, and the other cool thing too is like the garage is not just me, and I think that's something I haven't talked about yet either. Right? It's our team, but like we also have a bunch of other directors as well, and we're now, as of the last year, we have live action directors as well that don't do tabletop, but like because once again, like all the R&D we do, everything we've learned, all the lessons we've learned, why should it just only benefit me? Like we want image making just to be better. We want everybody's stories to be better. We want once again, brand stories to be better. Like we want them to do better so they have more money to pay us more money. So it is about the whole thing. So, we have this guy, Matt Jennis, is one of our live action directors. He's awesome. Like the way he sees transitions and motion control on every shoot. We actually met him by him renting our robots for a shoot that he was doing for Amazon. And we're like, dude, this guy's cool. He all his stuff was previs and Unreal, and he really got what he was trying to do. So once again, we want to use all the tools that we have, and even our rigging effects team, you could hire them out for your shoots as well if there's something that somebody needs. Because once again, we are all about being part of the community of image makers, and we want to be that place for that innovation all across the board, not just tabletop. Obviously, the tabletop is the most painful place to do it because it's the most high speed, the most macro focus. Like things are just so tricky. Everything it is like when we're shooting wide on a 24. Oh, look, this is so easy. And now the next chapter is virtual production. Like how do we bring like practical effects in front of the LED wall and marry those things together, because that's what we're already doing, and motion control, blah blah blah, to make just stuff we've never seen before. And I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
awesome.
I was gonna say it's really great to see you that you're open to the community and people reaching out to you for more information and just like really collaborating with people and growing.
Yeah.
So, Steve, thank you so much.
No,
It's
thank
been
you guys, man.
absolutely fabulous.
Can
Thank
we
you for
do it
being
again tomorrow? No.
Same
time, same place.
Thank you, Bert, for reaching out and getting him on, and thank you for answering your DMs because it really means a lot to us.
Yeah.
And next time, I'll get you a few robots for these cameras.
Oh
So
my
they're
God,
gonna-
that'd be amazing.
Oh my God, a whole episode.
This is way too static for my life, Yeah.
Well, I think I can speak for all of us that we're really excited. We'd love to go to the garage and
Yeah,
visit
come on
and
over,
check it
man.
out and set everything in Brooklyn and see how it all works.
Cool.
And thank you guys out there for watching. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Rap Drinks. Peace.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.